also want to highlight the pain points that we encountered during our playtime in Season 4. And then we are obviously also going to jump right into the Season 5 PTR new content with the Infernal Hordes, general updates to the game, like the boss summoning altar reappearing after you have summoned them and killed them once, and also general class balance going into Season 5 PTR, and then also our wishes or hopes for the time maybe after the PTR, and our forecast, so to say, and hopes for changes that are also going to result out of the PTR. And maybe if we have some time at the end, we can rapid fire some chat questions and just talk about that a little bit. But it would be very boring if I would just sit here alone. So I have invited the Maxwell friends over here, and maybe we can get a short introduction from you guys. Maybe Rex, you start out real quick.
I'm Rex. I wear a blue hoodie. I play a lot of Diablo and sometimes some other stuff.
Thank you. Lucky.
Hi, I'm Lucky Luciano, and I mostly play Rogue in D4. Prior to D4, I played Diablo 2 for my entire life. So I would say big on D2 and really enjoying D4 so far, and looking forward to the future of the game. So.
And DM, how about you?
My name's Casey, and I play video games.
That's great. And I'm Chronix. I am part of the Max Roll Guide Writer team, specifically for the Necromancers, alongside MacroBioBoy. And I think we assembled quite a nice round for today. So I would quickly start out with the first topic here with our Season 4 recap. We did have quite a lot of additions to the game with the tempering, masterworking, and everything like that. After playing the game for now a little bit more than 5 to 6 weeks, how is everybody feeling about the season? Did we live up to the expectations we had after the PTR? Is something big missing? And how's your general feeling on all of the stuff that we've gotten with the Season 5 release? Season 4 release.
Okay. You want to go, DM? Go ahead.
I was just going to do a very generic. I have enjoyed Season 4 way more than I have enjoyed any other season. When Season 2 for me was probably the last one I really enjoyed, but Season 4 to me has been like twice as good as Season 2, and I liked Season 2. So this is definitely the longest I've played any of the seasons since the game has been out. I'm enjoying. I mean, there's the complaints I'm sure we'll get into, but like for the most part, I've pretty much really been enjoying the season.
Yeah, you can see a clear philosophy shift from when the game launched to where we are now in Season 4. And I think the more that they go in this direction, things like, okay, you're not handcuffed to do one activity to get one resource, and that's what you have to do. They were forcing us into so many of these endgame systems now and in the future. I think we can see even in Season 5, they're really moving towards the play your way style of endgame. And if you want to do this one activity and like that's all you love about Diablo, and you can do it, and you'll get materials for everything. It may not be the most efficient way, but you can still have a good time and be playing what you want to play instead of having to run Nightmare Dungeons over and over, because that was the only way to play efficiently in the previous season. So great direction. I'd like to see more of it in the future, but big win, I think, for me for Season 4.
Yeah, I think going into Season 4, Blizzard has solved potentially the biggest looming issue with the game that had ruined the game for a lot of people in the other seasons. And that's your gameplay was whatever activity you're doing, you are picking up an entire inventory of yellows and parsing through them all day long. People forget that that used to be how we played Diablo 4. And that's really not what you do anymore. It's not completely solved, but they did kind of abolish that gameplay, which to me is probably by far the biggest win of Season 4. The other thing, major thing that they tried to address, and it again, they're going to tackle it again in Season 5, which we'll see how it goes, is the endgame. I still continue to believe that that is the biggest problem with the game. I've only gotten to pit 85 just out of sheer boredom. I can't bring myself to go back in and climb higher for no leaderboard and the same mats that I'm already getting at level 60. So I'm glad that they're aware of that. I'm glad that the season theme coming up is once again a major endgame addition. That would be, again, where I'd be putting my focus on to continue to improve the game.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I'm also having so much fun with the season so far. I try to put a number on it, and I actually came up with this metric and trying to compare it between the other two bigger ARPGs, talking about Path of Exile and Last Epoch here specifically, and trying to somehow compare the enjoyment that I get out of the game. And I've settled down to trying to compare the length of time I just play them while not having to force myself, actually. And when I look at Path of Exile, for example, and I look at a very good season or league for that matter in Path of Exile, I look at maybe like 6 weeks of like full blasting, and I'm extremely excited that D4 was able to match that. And that kind of put it into perspective for me, where I was like usually done after like 2 or 3 weeks, whereas now I easily doubled that with just one new season edition, basically. That kind of was eye-opening for me. That discovery that somehow fun-wise or gameplay-wise, length-wise, we are on par with a Path of Exile League, at least for me. I don't know how you guys feel about a metric like that.
Lengthwise, I would agree. I mean, I play the PoE leagues as well. I actually played this D4 league longer than I played Necropolis League, to give you an idea. For me, part of it was shrinking the leveling. Like, shrinking the leveling reduced the amount of time it actually takes to get to 100, so you would think your time playing the game would be less. But then what that actually ended up doing is me feeling like, okay, well, I'll just make another class. So normally I would just play one class in a season, and I'll play for like probably 2 weeks in Diablo 4 season. And by then, I'm pretty much done. Like season 3, I only played like a week, so I just didn't really like the season. But now it's like, oh, if I want to level another class, I'm leveling a barbarian right now. It's like I can level another class, and I don't really feel like I'm throwing away like 2 days of the 7 days of the league. You can just level one. It's like no problem. So I feel like even though they shorten the amount of time it takes to like get to level 100, it actually kind of increased the amount of time that I'm spending getting characters to 100. So because of that, yeah, it's kind of inflating in terms of length. It's definitely inflating the amount of time that I've spent in this season.
Yeah, length is great, but we can't forget about width, and I think just like it's like so much deeper now, the experiences of playing Diablo 4 with the item tempering system, masterworking, and this journey that we're on. I think the reason that we are playing so more is because there are just so many more deeper mechanics that you can dive into, even if you don't necessarily like pushing pits like racks. You still interact with the tempering system, masterworking systems, even in the early part of the game, and you can really optimize like a speed run, like Rax has been doing with these additions to the game. So it's just there's so many more things to think about as you're playing. It really adds to the player experience, even if you're not necessarily playing for a long time. You're still interacting with these systems, which is very rewarding, I think.
So that's something that I was going to add, kind of like mixing what Lucky and DM said. I've spent a lot of time this season leveling up, and the reason why that's interesting to me is part of it is you can do it very quickly. It's nice to fire up a stream and get to 100 by the end of it. So the speed is part of it, but it actually turns into kind of this like cerebral puzzle, because people will say, well, what do you mean it's cerebral? You don't do anything, Rax. You go into the capstone and you just one-shot them instantly. Well, yeah, you one-shot them instantly if you make a really good character and you like level up to the proper level and stuff like that. But what the puzzle has turned into is, how do you kill these bosses at such a low level? And then the follow-up is, how do you stay alive in World Tier 3 and World Tier 4 to take advantage of those XP multipliers to really race fast? And every time that you go through one of these runs, you learn more and more and more. And that's where it gets a lot more fun for me. This is the part that's missing for me in the pit. I can tell you every pit run ever. It's going to be the exact same thing. You walk in, there's 5 elites. There's a little bit of trash. There's 5 more elites. You turn the corner. There's a pylon. There's 5 more elites. There's a portal. Second floor, 5 more elites. A little bit of trash. 5 more elites. Portal, boss. Hopefully you don't get the outlaw sharpshooter, and then you win or you don't. You get the same materials you've gotten. You click upgrade 1 through 12 on your items, and you're done. It's like there is nothing to think about there. So I hope that Blizzard can continue to make more of these experiences where it's both fun and quick in terms of getting to 1 to 100, but also you can make it challenging and get rewards if you know a lot more about the run itself.
So basically, just to sum this up, we talked about the length, the width, and then how to actually do it, right? Like Rex with the how. We need to solve the puzzle here, right? To actually be able to have fun and not just have this single layer approach that, well, the pit currently, in Rex's opinion, basically offers us, right? I'm having my fair share of fun with the pit, also pushing it, but to be honest, that mainly came from the leaderboard that we created basically ourselves at the beginning of the season, where we try to actually race against each other and see who can come out on top. But yeah, I'm also at a point right now where I just reset an amulet and I'm trying to farm up my 700 Neath Iron, or a little bit less, to keep trying to hit that double Masterwork crit on the GA passive that I have, and it's at a point where I'm like, okay, this is kind of rough. I would love to push it, but the incentive kind of is missing for sure. I can definitely understand that. And when we say that is the incentive, or that is a little bit of a problem that we currently have, apart from tempering being obviously a little bit how do you say, problematic when it comes to RNG and bricking items and stuff like that, is there anything that you say this is also one of the pain points that I have identified that is maybe not really part of the tempering pit loop that we have during season 4?
I'm sorry. Yeah, what exactly was the question?
I'm sorry. Is there any other pain point that is not really revolving around the gameplay loop of pit and getting the materials required for it to then be able to masterwork your tempers, basically? Is there any outside pain point that is not really part of that real endgame loop here that we encountered during the season 4? Is there anything else that you guys?
I mean, I can tell you why I think Path of Exile, one of the main reasons why Path of Exile's endgame loop feels so good, and why pretty much all the other games don't feel as good. It's I call it the Pokemon effect. Lucky's got the cards right behind him there. I love Path of Exile's gotta catch 'em all system. I think it's brilliant. I don't know of a better way to do it. I don't know why more games don't adopt it. So when you walk into the mapping system of Path of Exile, it's divided into different tiers. There's the white maps, there's the yellow maps, there's the red maps. They get harder. And there's also the legendary maps or whatever. And you specifically have a plan in how you interact with the system to try to clear each map one time. And the ways that they've built in certain difficulties with the different affixes for the different builds, some bosses are really bad for certain builds to kill. It feels like just the right challenge. And the gotta catch 'em all system means as you play intelligently through it, kind of like what we were talking about with Diablo 4 leveling, playing intelligently, trying to make a really good build so you can do the capstone early, you can get the higher XP multiplier at the higher world tier. If you have a really, really good strategy between the maps that you get and the Atlas tree that you make and the Kirak missions and how it all morphs together, and then picking the specific bosses that you want to kill for your void stones, it just feels good. It feels like every time that you log in, whether you spend 20 minutes or 2 hours, you're making meaningful progress to your character. And it's not just clicking upgrade from 1 to 12 on your gear. It's also actually it's almost like unlocking a Paragon board in a specific way based upon how you're playing. I love this, and this is what makes me so excited every time that I play Path of Exiles, to complete my Atlas tree and to get my 4 Void Stones. It's not free at all. It's a fun puzzle to solve. The other games, Monolith system kind of has it. In the Nightmare Dungeon system, it's completely absent. There's no like kill all the regular bosses, kill all the uber bosses, kill all the different bosses in the pit at different levels. There's no complete one of each of the 60 Nightmare Dungeons. There's no open 10 of each of the different kinds of chests in Helltide and World Tier 4 to unlock something. It's all just random playing. That's the part that I think is critically missing from Diablo 4.
Another part I think that's missing and ties in, I think, to what Rax is saying. Diablo 4 could add all of these endgame systems to the game, but there's such a discrepancy, I feel like, between the risk and reward, or how difficult the content is and what you're actually getting as a result of completing that content. Like, there is no reason to push the pits. You don't get anything better for doing it. You don't get, your character doesn't get that much stronger. You know, staying at a low level and just farming as fast as possible is the best way to level up. Similar to like the uber bosses. Uber bosses die in one shot to nearly any optimized build, at least at the lower level before you get to tormented, and they drop some of the best loot in the game. Like, I don't see what my goal is. Like, why am I getting stronger? Why am where's the fantasy? Why do I want my character to be better when doing these harder activities don't reward me in the same way? Where I think like Path of Exile does a lot better job as you progress and you get into the more difficult content, the drops, loot, everything that you get as a result for doing it gets a lot better and increases. Even with monoliths, like every time you increased your corruption, you were getting better drops and more drops. But I don't feel that in Diablo 4, and it kind of ruins the like my desire to really push the content and get to those further levels of endgame.
I agree with the reward point. Like in PoE, it's almost decided for me what activity I'm going to do based upon what reward I'm trying to acquire. Depending upon if I'm trying to get currencies or essences or what have you, then I'll just go down the tree and I'll pick that specifically. One of my concerns when we were looking at Season 5 and we see the rewards, I think the new roguelite mode looks awesome. I know we're about to get into the Season 5 discussion. Like I'm basically getting what I was hoping out of Season 5, which is an additional game mode. That's what I was wanting. But I thought that the way they were going to do when they introduce it is the reward for that would be fairly something unique. The reward for the new game mode is going to be you either pick gold, legendary items, or crafting materials. And so it's just, if you put the same reward into everything, it almost doesn't matter what you do. Whereas if you have particular rewards that are individualized per game mode, then you kind of have a reason to do each one of those. They sort of did it with the pit, but now they're taking pit materials and they're putting them here, which is probably a win overall. But I find myself thinking that in terms of reward, like if we have a gold problem and then the answer is just give gold in a chest that you're going to run it for the same time, then I kind of lose a little bit of meaning behind it. I was kind of hoping when they were doing the tempering solution, we have the greater affix one, which is a good enough solution. It was actually one of the ones, was it you, Chronix, that brought it up on the last podcast? Someone suggested that in one of the podcasts that we were in.
It wasn't me. It was either Woody or Die.
It might have been Die. I don't remember. But someone suggested that, and they actually are implementing it. And I thought, like, my solution to that would have been, like, okay, the new game mode instead, you can pick in the chest to give an item that gives you, like, +1 temper. And then that way you have a reason to, like, farm this. So you have meaning for each of the additional content that gets added to the game. And that's what gives you the variety of gameplay. So I guess if you're asking for criticism or one of the potential issues that we still have with the game, for me, it's a little bit of a lack of reason behind the variety. Everything drops an Uber. Everything drops all items. Everywhere I go, I'm getting the same reward. The pit's the only thing that gives something unique.
Yeah, I can just fully agree. I'm also, just to tie this all together, we need like a thread that just connects all these pieces and kind of like pushes you to the next thing to force you to progress further, right? I think we are kind of doing that a little bit though, but we're also just throwing it out the window with the Infernal Hordes that we're just going to be covering in a second here. But what I really liked actually was that when you hard reset your masterworked items, you are going to run out of rawhide and iron chunks. And that forces you to do Legion events, which at first I was very mad to actually run into that problem, but actually having to do Legion events then at some point was making me feel like, oh, wait, there is actually, we are trying to push into that direction where Path of Exile is. If you want to have your bubblegum currency, or if you want to have your harvest stuff, you go do harvest. If you want to, you have like these target farmable things or activities in the game that are going to reward you something that you need right now. And I was actually hoping that we would get the new game mode, which would not only introduce a new problem to solve, but obviously sell us also or bring with it the solution to that problem it's going to introduce. And I think it's also kind of like a missed opportunity here a little bit, that we just get, you get everything basically. So while providing a solution to everything, is it really going to be something that we are going to be doing outside of Season 5? I'm not actually sure if that is going to be the case.
I think you make a good point,
ahead, Lucky.
Chronix. Sorry if I interrupted, but you touched on something really good, which was at first you didn't like having to run legions, but then you enjoyed it, or you felt more rewarded from it. And I think that that's fine. I think that there can be a way to get rawhide and these materials, everywhere in the game. But then if you really want to focus on it, then you can do this one activity and it can reward you much more than if you were doing other things. But the problem I have with Legion and some of the other things, world bosses, is that it's content that is like AFK content. Like your build is likely so strong that you are not being challenged at all in legions or world bosses. You are just going them to check off the box to get this item, and you can't really tailor it to the difficulty or the level that you want to be playing at necessarily. It's not very rewarding content to be playing. When you're just going in, face rolling everything. You're going to one shot everything. Even the boss at the end is just going to get one shot, and that's not everyone like really enjoys that kind of play style. And I think there could be a big benefit here of tweaking those systems just a little bit to make it more engaging, I think, when you're actually playing it, rather than, okay, I'm just going to do this mindless thing so I can get this one material to continue playing the game that I want to play. So I think that it's good, but it can be improved in that sense.
So they're changing it in Season 5. I don't know if you guys saw the note. World bosses are much more resilient to damage. It doesn't sound like they buff the rewards, but world bosses are going to be tougher. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem that Blizzard had, and it's kind of like, I guess throughout the year, they have had negative reactions to a lot of stuff that they've released in the game. So they've tried to release a very quick response to change a bunch of systems. And in a lot of cases, it's actually worked. But in particular with like the boss system, for example, how everyone hated it. Everyone's saying this is so stupid, you have to change it. And now they put the materials drop everywhere. And several of you have made the point, when everything drops everywhere and you don't have any ability to target farm something specific, the game isn't fun. I'm not sure that they exactly hit it right here, because the problem with the boss ladder was not necessarily the structure of the boss ladder itself. It was all the little details that they have fixed along the way. For example, Varshan takes 4 mats of everything, and those mats drop so scarcely that the whole process of it's not the process of fighting Varshan and the different things to go fight Duriel. It's how you let me go fight Varshan is so unbelievably annoying that it makes me hate the whole system. And then when I finally do farm everything, every single time I have to port out and reset the dungeon, which people were crying for. But all of those things were fixed after they changed the entire system. And I'm not sure why they did that. Why didn't you make the small changes and see if the system still worked? And then if people didn't like it, then you change the system. It was kind of backwards, and I'm not sure if they would have made all the quality of life stuff first, it could have still like worked very well.
Yeah, I get that. I get that for sure. I'm trying to come up with a solution here with a brainstorming idea. You said, or trying to copy kind of what other ARPGs does. We have corruption. We have, very generally speaking, juicing maps in PoE. So would it be a solution to, well, I see people in chat say World Tier 5. Yes, that would probably be obvious, but that brings a whole set of other problems with it. I actually really like the Profane Mind Cage, and I think there is a lot of value in that Profane Mind Cage to give us some sort of juicing up that easy content that Lucky was mentioning, and then cater it to our build's strength to then also increase the reward. Let us juice up legions or anything else for that matter to not only challenge our builds even more, but also give us more rewards for the time that we're putting into. Is that something that you guys would just now coming up with that? Does that sound good, or does it bring a lot of other problems with it?
For buffing legions, I don't see how increasing the levels by 10 for you specifically can really mess up anything. It seems like a pretty small change.
I mean, maybe even stacking it multiple times, right? On top of
like level 300 or something to eat like 20 of them.
Well, if you can handle it, why not?
I like the concept of juicing, you know, so you can kind of like, it's kind of like Elden Ring does it in kind of a different way, where you can play naked with a stick, or you can use a level 10 mimic or anything in between, kind of play your own way. But like if I don't know, if Blizzard was approaching me as, this is the solution, this is our current solution for the end game, what do you think? We're going to have these different juicing mechanics. That would not be the very, very interesting thing for me. So, okay, let's think about it. Let's think about the dilemmas that Blizzard has pointed out to us in the campfire chat about them building up characters. They say, okay, well, I want to preserve class fantasy, and every class can't play the same way. And then as the community continues to make different builds, some builds hit really hard, but they can't apply vulnerable. Some builds play minions, but the minion AI is really stupid and you're really slow. So the class fantasy is there, and you know, every build's got some different problems. What I would be doing is I would make another end game progression system separate from Paragon, separate from the skill tree. It doesn't have to even be that complicated. It's kind of like the season journey, but it's more like the gotta catch 'em all system from Path of Exile, with the different activities in the game. Reaching certain milestones in the Infernal Horde, killing the Butcher a certain number of times, killing a certain number of goblins, clearing one of every Nightmare dungeon, maybe clearing one of every Nightmare dungeon again above, I don't know, level 75 or whatever. You can clearing certain levels of the pit, bosses in the pit. You can think of a million different things. And then in that separate progression system, let's say like you can't cap it. There's no way you can get all the nodes, but you can kind of spec through it and either double down into a strength that your build really has, or you could use it to solve a critical problem that your build has. Your build can't apply vulnerable. If you get far enough in the right branch, speccing into this tree, your hits apply vulnerable for 3 seconds. There you go. And you're constantly you're making progress every time you log in. You're getting closer and closer to these different branches in this new system that is interesting, and it's actually meaningful. That to me is a million billion times better system than, here's a mind cage, Legion is 10 levels higher, here's some more rawhide.
That sounds great. That is actually great. I'd love to have that in the game. And it's, oh, man, just thinking about that actually makes me want to want to play that. And it's also like a lot of replayability, right? Because you go into you go into one branch with one character, and you could remake that same build and go the complete different direction.
That's
right?
what I'm saying.
You're generating replayability over and over again, right?
I mean, that's what I'm saying, man. It's like, here's the thing I always say. It's like, okay, Blizzard used to be at the top of these games, right? And okay, everyone has different opinions, but most people's opinions of Blizzard has kind of fallen off the wagon a little bit. I have to imagine that a lot of the developers, a lot of the coders, like kind of dreamed as little kids of working for Blizzard. Okay, you're there now, and I know there's a lot of corporate red tape, and I'm sure it's way harder than what I'm making it, but when I see like, oh, the Mind Cage gives you plus 10 levels, the first question I have is that all you got? Like, what are your crazy ass ideas to make an ARPG fun? Like, everyone throw all your ideas on the table, and how can we make some crazy ass systems that make the game fun? I'm starting to see it a little bit more. I'm starting to see it with some of the uniques that they're doing, like with the axial conduit, like they make a Super Saiyan ball lightning. That's what I'm looking for, man. You don't just have to do it for character builds. You can do it with your progression systems. Like, show me what you've got. You know what I mean?
I think the truth is they're probably not going to like go hog wild with it like at all, because if they do it, it's going to break a lot of things, and then they're going to spend time like going back and fixing the things that are broken, and somehow barbarians are going to do 18 trillion damage again. It's like maybe like I would prefer them try it too as well, but it's somehow I doubt it. I think what we're probably going to end up seeing is like, you know, with the expansion, new skills, and then maybe some new Paragon boards. I kind of feel like what it is that for the progression systems should have been tied to the Paragon board instead of just, I feel like the Paragon boards just give me raw stats, like give me fire resistance, give me percentage damage. Okay, if I level my exploit glyph, now I apply vulnerable. Like that's all I'm really getting out of it. All of the weird variations and the extra stuff should be done in the Paragon board. It almost feels like it needs a little bit of a rework or something instead of just raw stats.
That sounds great. We've cut the Infernal Hordes here a little bit. We already talked just a tiny bit about it. I want to quickly jump to the next topic here. Infernal Hordes, the big new selling point of Season 5, basically. A game mode that is roguelike, as they called it, where we can defeat waves after waves and choose power-ups or boons and curses to, well, power up or even make the playthrough a little bit harder for our character, and will then actually have the ability to fight a set of bosses. We will have 10 different encounters that are going to be a mix of 5 bosses every time that we have there. And yeah, what were your initial impressions when you saw that?
I've thought about what a rogue-like experience would look like in a Diablo game for actually a long time now, and I'm so happy that we finally get an iteration of it. What I've always pictured was something like just Diablo 1, right? Where you start at the top, and every level you go down, it gets harder and harder. You get to pick maybe a boost here and there that will help you on your journey, and then it also adds some sort of difficulty. And then when you get to the bottom, you fight this big scary boss, and that's it basically. And returning to hell, I thought, okay, this sounds exactly like what I've been picturing. Just an endless wave system maybe doesn't hit exactly where I wanted it in the whole return to hell. I pictured going deeper and deeper and deeper and eventually reaching hell, rather than just endless waves. But regardless, I'm excited for it. I think that it adds a lot of replayability. I hope we'll have to see, with the implementation. But my only thing, again, and I get back to this risk reward thing, like I hope that we are rewarded for our time there, because I don't know how long they are expecting us to, I don't know how long it's going to take. And there's been a disproportion in the length of time it takes to do something and what you get out of it. So I just hope that they do, balance that well, so that I can just keep playing it over and over and over again. I'll be really interested to see, what options they give us in terms of the buffs and then the difficulty. I actually asked the question during the campfire chat of how difficult the highest tier. So there's 8 difficulties. And I asked how difficult the 8th tier would be, and it sounded like it was around like a pit 80 to a pit 100. when I picture this roguelike, I always wanted it to be sort of endless, if I want to say, in terms of difficulty. Like there can be a conclusion where you fight a boss, but I wanted to be able to push and push and push as far as I can. And my concern there would be that it might be too easy for some players, not all players, but for some players that are looking for sort of this endless delve roguelike into hell experience. So those would be my things that I'm excited about, and maybe some concerns that I have.
I'm kind of go on.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just gonna say I'm mostly curious how they're gonna spawn the minions. Like, is it straight from Curse Shrine where you're sitting there and they all just kind of like pop out of the ground, and then you one shot them with holy bolts or whatever, and then the next wave pops out of the ground and you one shot that wave, and the next wave. Like, if that's how it's gonna be and you do the whole thing in like a minute, it'll be a little bit less exciting for me. I'll admit, when I saw it, like, I'm pretty excited. I'm still pretty excited because what I want in the game is a variety of game modes that are like little mini games. I think stuff like that is fun. I know there's a lot of like core issues that we always talk about and stuff, but like for me, I just like little reasons to log in and play the game. And like for me, it's like, oh, cool, a roguelite. Like, that actually sounds like fun. I'm going to try that out. So I was pretty much excited when I saw it. Still am hoping it will be fun. It's like the main thing is, if it's fun and something to do, I'll play it. I'm mostly curious how they're going to actually spawn the minions in on each wave. Like, are they going to run? I want them to see like run out of the mist and there's more and more and the density gets really crazy. But are they going to spawn like 10 guys on top of you that you one shot?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of different like implementations in Diablo and other games, and I've guessed in the past before I've played stuff, and I've been wrong on both ends. I've said stuff is going to be bad that ended up being good, and I said stuff that was good that ended up being bad. So I really won't know until I play it. The way that I view it is very similar to what DM just expressed. Think of it as a fun little wave-based mechanic that you jump into here and there. I think it will be fun for a period of time. My issue with it is it's giving you more of the same, right? It is nice that it has target farming. It does kind of fill the void of the things that you don't have. But the fact that it doesn't add anything new to the game, as far as I know, the gameplay is there, but there's no new materials. There's no new progression of anything within it. To me, it's kind of like a ticking time bomb for how long before you're just like, okay, I'm just doing these waves just for exactly what reason anymore. That's the biggest concern that I'm seeing going into it.
Yeah, I think I certainly hope it's not going to be a little bit like the Gauntlet at some point, where we are just going to be forgetting about it, because it's like it's the same preface that Rex had, right? Like, I really hope it's gonna smash and it's gonna be great and it's gonna be a lot of fun, but it kind of sounds like why should I even do that? You know, like, everyone is gonna be hype, everyone is probably gonna play it on the PTR, it's gonna go live, and then after a week you go like, well, just go for the pit to get my Neath Iron, or just go do my Legion event to get my Rawhide, because that's just faster, that's just more materials per hour, and the novelty of the thing has dropped or decreased over the course of the first 1 or 2 or 3 weeks. I was really hoping that we get something that creates an issue and then solves it at the exact same time with the Infernal Hordes. Basically a little bit like the pit did with putting the Neath Iron required to give us more power and give us a reason. I was hoping something along those lines will go to the Infernal Hordes. If it is going to be fun only, wouldn't it be better to make it endless, just like Lucky said? Because I think in roguelikes, I mostly have the most fun when I just get the god tier combination of boons and I can go further and further and further that I ever could, and it's not capped. Like, after wave 8 and then I defeated the bosses and then I'm done, I kind of want to keep playing the build. When I look at Soulstone survivors or stuff like that, I think the endless part of it is actually where the real fun begins, and then you just go, well, I go and do Infernal Hordes for the fun part, not necessarily for the reward itself, right? Is that something that could make it more attractive for just logging in and playing 20 minutes, for example?
100%. I mean, endless mode would be, I mean, I feel like objectively better if that was there.
So I would prefer an endless mode, but I'll play devil's advocate here. I'll pretend like I've got my Blizzard shirt on because this is what I hear them say. This is pseudo what I hear them say when anything like this comes up. They say essentially, we have the data of the demographics of our player base, and you, the content creators, have no idea how casual people are. You have no idea how 90% of the player base, how casual they are, how little they play, and how bad their builds are. They're maxing all the basic skills at the top of the tree, and they're not making a build. Some of them don't even know how to imprint. If you ask them, would you prefer an endless mode, or would you prefer you play it for 10 minutes and it ends? Those people would probably say, I would prefer that I only got 10 minutes to play. I got 4 wives and 7 kids and 3 jobs. I can only play 10 minutes a month. If you make it endless, then I don't know when to stop, and it stresses me out, and I don't want to do that. So I don't think this way, and I don't know if building your game around the people that are picking 5, maxing all the basic skills is the right way to design the game. But I'm just playing the role of, this is how I think Blizzard thinks about it when they make these decisions.
Yeah, so it becomes an equation at some point, right? So it's adding this mode. One, I don't think it detracts from a player that wants to play 10 minutes. I think you can still do the majority of the content maybe in 10 minutes, but you have the option of continuing to go. You've worked up, you've gotten these boosts, you got maybe crazy RNG one run, you got 8 at 8 of your best in slot boosts, and you want to just keep going. And maybe the rewards aren't great past that point, but you can still keep stacking them up and getting some good stuff. I don't think one detracts from another, but the equation that you have to calculate is, okay, who's actually going to do this? And is it worth the development time to create this endless system when most players, 95% of players, are just going to do the 10 minutes and be done with it? So, but I don't think one necessarily detracts from the other, but it's a matter of dev time. We know it's a scarce resource like anything, so whether or not it's worth it, they're the only ones that have the data on that. But it's a good point, I think, that you made.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's, let's say that they made the endless mode. It's like, okay, you can quit at any time. Like, you beat their wave, you can just leave, right? Like, you can get your rewards, but then they'll say, it stresses me out, just one more. Oh God, this mode took away my fun. Yes, you gave me the quit button, but I can't hit the quit button. I'm pretty sure that's how it would go, man. I don't know. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm pretty sure that's how it would go.
Yeah, so is it really going to be not as fun as it could be because the focus is a little bit off, at least from our perspective? I sure hope it's not going to be the reason that is going to be the case. I mean, we saw them nerf the tormented bosses by 30% in their HP, and I think everyone here and probably quite a lot of people in the chats don't really necessarily agree with that. I sure also hope that it's not the direction we are moving toward, right? But the data probably shows that that's the case, that Rags' example here is maybe even correct in that case.
I mean, go ahead, Dia.
I was just going to talk about the nerfing the tormented bosses. Like, Lilith is still, in my opinion, the coolest fight in the game. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings on this, which is like, sometimes she's really cool, sometimes they think she's bullshit. But like, for me, I had the most fun and still have the most fun every season when I go to fight Lilith with like a build that takes forever to kill her. And if they keep nerfing the HP of it, I don't think Lilith should be like a check mark where it's, let's make sure everyone can get participation trophy with Lilith. Like, we don't have really a lot of these like challenge things in the game, you know, that you can go and be like, I did it. Like, we don't really have a lot. We have the pit, but like the pit doesn't feel good. I got one more pit than the guy left to me. Like, who really cares? So like, for me, I in terms of nerfing the torment HP, For me particularly, I don't really care about nerfing the other one's HP, whatever. Everyone's just putting it on farm and one-shotting with Barbarian anyway. For me, it's about the Lilith. Like, make Lilith actually hard, or keep her hard, and stop like making her easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. You know, like for me, that's a little annoying. Because I think we should at least one hard challenge in the game where it's like, oh, you can't do it? Well, fuck you. Too hard, too bad. Like, actually, you know, learn the game. Like, I think there should at least be one of those. So stop nerfing her is my take.
Yeah, I mean, it's so right before season 4 came out, there were some interviews done with the developers where we got to actually kind of, you know, it's several hours to drill through the course of the 3 interviews to actually drill into the minds of the developers. So the part that DM said about there needs to be a small slice of the pie in the Diablo 4 game that's actually challenging, where you can't just completely outgear it. You do have to execute some skill. I think that is very healthy for the game to at least have a minimum of one encounter like that. But I'll tell you something, from watching those 3 interviews multiple times each and trying to really pay attention to the words and the philosophies that Blizzard was saying, I think that Diablo 4 is going to be built as the quote-unquote fun ARPG. Meaning, you know, everything that we've been saying, you log in, you do some Infernal Hordes, you do some Pit. There's no leaderboard. Pit 60 has now been nerfed. You can get there. You can masterwork all your items. The tormented bosses are nerfed. You can kill them even if you play a druid. And it definitely seemed like very consistently in their answers that is the direction of the game. I asked them point blank in one of the interviews, in the future, will you build an encounter where gear alone cannot save you, where it will require skill? And the answer I got was kind of, maybe we'll make one, kind of, which to me indicates kind of a no. So actually, after the round of interviews, my view on the game, my philosophy kind of changed, where Diablo 4 is just the game where you log in and, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I just don't take it as seriously. I'm just kind of chilling. And in Path of Exile, you're like, before you even hit login, you're already sweating. You feel your blood pressure rising. You're scared for your life before you even, you know, spawn on the beach. It's just much more of a try hard, sweaty game. Then the more that I think about it again, I am kind of glad that every game is not exactly the same. If everybody made the same game, then it would be boring. But I don't know. I guess I don't know if you guys felt any differently or if you guys watched those interviews, but to tack it on to this particular topic, I think Diablo 4 is trending toward more the easier side, fun side, appeal to everyone. Everyone can win eventually.
I think a lot of the changes coming in season 5 would enforce that point. Yeah.
It's getting easier, not harder, for sure. There's no doubt about it.
I think from their perspective, it just makes more sense to cater to the, I don't know, put a percentage on it, 90% of the player base than rather than the 10%. I guess that makes total sense. I can fully agree from like a business perspective. I definitely understand that. But I think that one boss that Rex was mentioning, that would actually be really cool. Like one thing where you, even if you are playing really well, you are smashing your head against the wall and trying your very best to actually come up with something that is going to get you to killing that boss closer and closer. I mean, Lilith, or the race to killing Lilith back then when it was all fresh, that was very exciting. I remember I remember everyone having a blast, actually, like watching the people progress, Uber Lilith. Finally the takedowns happened, and I think that is something that not only fun to actually be part of, but also to see when others are facing that challenge. So I'm a bit sad that it's currently not in the game. I hope that maybe the raids in the future are going to be something like that when we get a difficulty scaler or so, where we can really crank it up to 11 and literally only get a title for it, or even not even a title, just give us nothing and just let us die on the first trash mob in the first raid. That would be great. I think I would have a lot of fun doing that. To go to the more general changes. Yes, Rex?
No,
Did you want to add something?
No. I'm dialed in. I'm listening.
Okay. The general updates for Season 5, stuff like the boss summoning altar reappearing and basically everything that is coming with Season 5. What were your highlights when you were watching through the campfire chat? And what are you most excited about, apart from the Infernal Hordes, when it comes to the general up?
New unique items. New unique items, number one. New legendary items, number two. I think build diversity is something that most people would agree they want more of, and that really is only coming with new additions in terms of gear acquisition right now. So for me, it's unique items and legendary items.
Yeah, if I could double down on that, and for the following reasons why I like unique items and legendary items so much. Specifically, though, I'm going to target unique items. We know that unique items took a huge hit in Season 4 once tempering was introduced, but I am really liking the direction that they're taking unique items now. We're seeing a little bit of it in Season 5. The reason why I like it, all of us on this call are theory crafters in a sense, and the changes that they made to itemization makes it so much more difficult to try new builds, or at least it just takes so much longer. If everything you're using is a legendary item and you have to temper it and you have to masterwork it to really test out a build, like that is taking away from my experience as a theory crafter, and it hits all levels. Even a player that doesn't necessarily like to theory craft may not know the tempers to hit or wants to try a new build, but you don't really know what's going to enable it. And I think the direction that they're taking with the unique items is, okay, now when you get this unique item, you have a sense for how your build is going to play. You can enhance it with legendaries, tempering, masterworking to go further, but for the most part, these uniques are going to be build enabling in a sense. They really want them to be very good for the build that you want to play. And they added on things like tempering. So that gives you a bit of a guide for a player that maybe is new to theory crafting or doesn't do it as much. Like, okay, I know that I want this temper because I see it on this unique item that they gave me. So I'm going to try to get it on my other items too. So I think it's just a great direction for the game. I think it helps new players and experienced players. It's going to help me be able to try new builds because I can just throw on a unique now. I don't have to worry about tempering something and masterworking it to this level and spending an ungodly amount of hours just to try a new build. And I really like that. And I hope they continue to go in that direction, but just going to double down on what DM said, like the uniques and legendaries for that reason.
Yeah. So part of it goes for me about the uniques goes back to what I said on like a previous comment where I don't want to see items anymore that give you 10% attack speed stacking up to 3 times. Goes back to the thing of you're working at Blizzard, you're designing Diablo. What do you got? I want frozen orbs to spawn conjurations that then throw frozen orbs. I want chain lightning to bounce between you, create ball lightning, and then explode at the end. Like that's what I'm looking for is game-changing uniques. So I actually get a little bit of a dopamine hit when they drop. This would be probably a little bit of an unpopular opinion amongst the masses. So I'm going to lose 10,000 followers for saying it. But another thing that would make me feel better about uniques is if you make them rarer. If they're very rare, like when I'm playing Diablo 2, when an Arachnid mesh drops, I never have that feeling in Diablo 4 because it's hard to find. Same with a Shaco, same with an Oculus. In Diablo 2, when a Jaw rune drops, it's unbelievable. I just don't have those dopamine hits really in Diablo 4, and it's something that I really miss. Something about the general philosophy of Diablo 4. This is one thing that the team is doing extremely well, and 99% of the time it has a benefit, and only 1% of the time does it ever hurt you. Diablo 4 is doubling down on when the community asks for quality of life stuff, We're seeing it now season after season. They are just willing to start implementing it. And I think this is just a win. I think you could make the game very challenging and very rewarding while still building in a ton of quality of life into games, like resetting the boss altars. The best example I could give is Elden Ring. Elden Ring gives you just about every quality of life feature you could imagine, and they give it to you right away. They give you a horse. The horse has like infinite sprint. The horse can double jump. You can port anywhere at any time unless you're stuck in a dungeon. You have choose your own difficulty. You can level up at any save point. You can item craft whenever you want, wherever you want. There's so much quality of life in the game, yet there's so many awesome dopamine hits, and there's still so much challenge in the game. So people say, well, if you just put in every quality of life thing, you can't have those things. Wrong. Not true. I can give you an example where it works. You can see Path of Exile start to adopt this as well. They had a live stream, a developer stream a little bit ago, where the community made a bingo board of all the quality of life stuff that they wouldn't implement into the game over the years because they wanted you to feel the weight, and that's fine. Path of Exile does a lot of things right, but a lot of the things on the bingo board, they finally conceded, okay, yeah, we can do this. Okay, we can make your gameplay a little bit better to play the game. I really think 99% of the time that you implement these quality of life features, you win, and only 1% of the time you lose.
I have to agree. What is a quality of life thing that you are currently missing, though, Rex? Is there something that comes to mind right at the top of your head?
I mean, probably the biggest thing is probably the boss change. The biggest thing that they haven't solved is, for me, the tempering. And this is a little bit more of a quality of life thing. This is more of like an actual game mechanic thing. But here's the thing for me with tempering. People say that they hate bricking their items. Blizzard said, I don't mind that you brick your items. Cool. I mean, I don't mind that philosophy either. That's the problem. Is not that philosophy. The problem is you brick your item instantly at the start of your item's journey. Tempering is the first thing that you do, because are you going to spend 100 million gold re-rolling your pants for +4 to chain lightning or whatever? It's going to cost you 100 million gold. It's so rare, and then you're going to temper it? You just lost 100 million gold, buddy. My problem is the part of the bricking and the endless RNG happening at the first step of the item. That to me doesn't make any sense. The other super obvious one, which I think is required to implement in the game, with the way that you've changed the game, with the multiple different modes of the game, the Helltide, the Legions, the world boss. You've made the world bosses harder now, by the way. The roguelite, the pit. I think you need loadouts. I don't want to level another character, one for speed farming, one for pushing the pit, which is what most people do because leveling is so easy now. The solution is just make another rogue or whatever. So you have two of them. I think you must implement loadouts. They're in Diablo 3. They're in WoW. You've already made the system 100 times. It can't be that complicated. I think it's a requirement, and I think it needs to come immediately.
Why loadouts aren't here already? I was trying to think about this. We talked about this on the last podcast, and forgot who it was. Point was that they don't want it to be where you have to min-max a loadout for each thing. So you have a loadout for a Legion, you have a loadout for whatever. And I was saying you can counter this just by making it where you can only revert back to the previous one. But either way, I was thinking about that since that podcast. And it's like, who cares if there is a min-max? Like, what if there is a min-max for world boss, a min-max for whatever, man? Like, who actually cares? Like, how does it actually ruin the game any? You just spend time setting up a new build, a new loadout for whatever your character is actually going to do. It just lets you customize your character. So I don't know if it's did they ever give a reason as to why the armory? What was the reason? Because I must have missed this.
Yeah, so there was a campfire chat. I think it was right before the game launched, and people asked for loadouts. And they said, keep in mind, like, it's different now, right? They've had a complete philosophical change in the last year. So what you're going to hear is not what happened, because they changed it. But what they said was, the reason why Diablo 4 will not come with loadouts is because your choices need to matter. If you remember, there was no respecking feature. There wasn't any respec all thing. And respecking actually used to have, I think it had a scaling cost. They were actively penalizing you for respecking because they wanted your choices to matter. I think they were thinking like vanilla Diablo 2. In vanilla Diablo 2, it was, I think it was was it impossible to respec?
Yes.
You made the choice and there was nothing. That's it. You made your choice. If you press one skill in the wrong thing, you got to make another sorcerer. And I think they were like, I appreciate the high level idea of, okay, Diablo 2, greatest ARPG. Let's just do what Diablo 2 did. But it just didn't work. People complained about it all the time. They gave us a respec mode. The cost of respecking is now nothing. And the journey used to be the whole process of playing your build 50 to 100. That's the end game. They completely changed their mind on that. So that's why they were designing the game with no loadouts in mind. But now that they have made this massive philosophical change, not only would loadouts be a good thing for the game, it's a requirement. So it's the paradigm shift within Blizzard that caused that.
For another quality of life thing, I'm surprised nobody has said it yet, or maybe you did, but just loot filters, like, just give me. They've improved the visual. I would say being able to visually see what's on the ground, especially the change to Uber Uniques. Super stoked about that. Let me tell you, dopamine, it's a real thing, and it just wasn't. You just weren't getting it in D4. Even with the greater graphics, like, cool, I got a greater graphics, but is it even going to be good? Do I know when it drops on the ground, or do I have to wait till I look at my inventory? So, I mean, a loot filter just fixes all of that. Right when something drops, that it's something I'm going to use. Basically, you could cater a loot filter to do that. And it just seems like such low-hanging fruit. It's been asked for every which way. I don't know why it's still not in the game in a modern day ARPG, but I would love to see that at some point. I don't think it's super necessary now with the itemization changes, but just why not have it? Like, I would love it, at least.
We also need a sell all button, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's really important. I wanted to also point out, like they said, Adam Fletcher said at the end of this campfire for the season 5 PTR, they said they hear us for the armory, but it just takes a lot of development time to implement it. So, I mean, it's sure coming, the armory or the loadout system, whatever you want to call it, right? But it takes some time. I am not a game developer. I don't really know how that works and how complicated that is, but I'm definitely glad that they are not dismissing the talk there, but they have more or less kind of said, yes, we're kind of working on it, and sure going to come in the future. And yeah, I think I have to also agree with DM. I've also been thinking quite a lot after the podcast about just if someone needs to pay the exact cost for resetting your Paragon board and then changing it, there is going to be a difference of points and a cost resulting to it. Let me just pay this front whenever I want to change the loadout, and it's going to instantly teleport the stuff from my stash onto my character, and then it's going to remove the currently equipped gear and move it into the stash. I think that's a very, very important solution here to the problem, and I wouldn't also mind getting that sooner rather than later, especially with the amount of stuff that is getting added in terms of gameplay. With the Infernal Hordes, you probably don't really care about movement speed, right? Probably can't stand right there in the middle, so maybe us necromancers actually have a game mode they can shine in, and then just let everything run towards you. I want to kind of change the build, but then again, maybe that's also not the intended way of doing it, because you just want to get in there, kill the bosses, and then you're out, since there's no endless mode. I'm looking forward to it. Let's say that at least. The armory is definitely highly suggested. I don't know how your chat is looking like, but mine is definitely agreeing. Yeah, sure, Rex.
Can I ask for something with the armory system? And I don't know if this is in any game, but I think it would be very helpful for Diablo 4. Can we get a tab in our stash that's armory only, where it only stores gear that you have saved in a loadout? Because part of the reason why Blizzard might not want to make an armory is, your gear is mixed into your gear is mixed into with all the other gear that you're saving and you accidentally salvage it or you accidentally vendor it, make a armory only tab, one additional tab where you can put 3 or 4 sets of gear. And that way it's separate and oh, I better not mess with this tab. Otherwise, I'm going to lose a critical piece of gear. I would love it if they do that. Plus, we get an extra stash tab.
Do that. You could have a very simple pop-up too that you could add also that says like, this is in your build out number 3. Don't get rid of your weapon. It's gonna be deleted out of your armory set.
That would be good too. I'd prefer both. Don't let me salvage my weapon.
Yeah.
Yep. Even if it's favored.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. That is actually a really good addition. I haven't thought about that one yet. In terms of uniques and aspects that are being added that we have briefly talked about, when I saw Rex did some builds yesterday and trying to incorporate all of the new cool stuff the Necromancer has gotten, a movement ability, and we actually solved some problems or tried to solve some problems that are existing in the current game. But I don't know about you guys, but I feel like aspects taking that role of solving these problems is kind of like hindering the process of solving these problems in the first place, because I'm running out of space for my aspects, and I can't really solve the problems that you are trying to give me the solution for. Even if we have, let's say, 25 new uniques, 25 new aspects, I'm running out of space. And is there anything you guys had in mind to help solve that problem? Or any comments on that?
I was gonna ask what you prefer. So if for the Necromancer you want the aspect, what would you like? Base movement speed, or something in the Paragon board, maybe like percentage movement speed tied to blue nodes or something? What do you think your solution to that, Chronix?
My biggest idea is always I have to go back to D3, and I love Hedric's gift for that. I just have this idea in my mind where I say, give me I don't know, a halo or so at some sort of item slot where I can choose maybe 1 or maybe even up to 3, like we had in D3 with the Hedric's gift, aspects from previous seasons, and they are cycling. So basically, at some point, we have a pool of aspects or features that a season had to choose from. And for example, the first season, we get the new Hedric's gift. You have seasonal powers of season 4, 5, and not 4, 5, and 6, 1, 2, and 3. We have them in the game, but just as an example. And on the next season, you are going to not have season 1, 2, and 3 powers in that Hedric's gift. And sorry, not Hedric's gift.
You mean Kanai's Cube?
Kanai's Cube, yes, sorry.
I was going to say, okay.
Yeah, the Kanai's Cube. And in the next season, I can choose between season 4, 5, and 6 seasonal powers. I know season 4 didn't have any, but if that were the case. And that, in the background, is constantly cycling, giving us new solutions to problems. So you could actually play the same build every season, but you would have the chance of playing it new due to the addition of the Kanai's Cube and having new powers in that Kanai's Cube that are cycling itself. Because if you just keep giving me back seasonal powers or new aspects, I would love them, but I don't have any space to put them.
I want a follow-up question to that. Do you feel like tempering with the movement speed on your boots help you Necromancers out at all, or you still feel pretty slow?
No, it's actually fine. Like when you heavily invest into movement speed, I'm actually happy with it. But I do love them trying to solve the movement speed issue by giving us that new aspect that turns the ability into a completely new concept. I actually like that approach of completely changing the effect of the skill itself. But the problem with that is you are giving me, you are taking away, or you want me to use the aspect. I now need to use a skill point to actually be able to use that aspect. And then, which is probably the hardest thing to do, I need to make space for that on my skill bar. to be actually able to use it. Now I have these 3 points, and why would I use that new aspect when I could also just use metamorphosis? That is solving all of these issues with just no downside whatsoever, because it's still just an aspect. But on top of that, you also get unstoppable. So why would I ever exchange these aspects when one of them is clearly doing a better job for probably also other classes, right?
Yeah, so in this conversation, I would take these as 2 separate pieces, right? So the first piece I think is a design flaw, right? When you have one aspect that solves all of your problems and more, it invalidates all of the other aspects. It's what they talked about in the campfire chat earlier. Oh, Tybalt's will in season 3 or 2 or 3, it's just the best pants for every single build. So you just go get a Tybalt's will. It invalidates everything else in the game. The only time where I think that makes sense, where an item is so good that it can invalidate a ton of the game, is an uber unique. If it's not that, when you're invalidating everything, I would just call that specifically a design flaw. Conversely, in the exact opposite direction, when Blizzard is designing a bunch of different aspect slots for boots, let's say, and all of them do a very good job of solving a problem here or there very well, but it doesn't solve everything, I would call that an ideal state of the game, where you have choices based upon the choices that you made in other places. You get one puzzle piece to solve one thing. I think that's exactly how the game should be. The problem is a lot of the systems currently for Diablo 4, where you're trying to solve stuff, they're just so basic that you really don't have a lot of freedom to solve these problems. Blizzard keeps saying we don't want to expand the skill tree too much. We're going to expand the Paragon board a little bit, but the Paragon board is actually, when you actually take some time to stare at it, it's actually so straightforward. There gives you much leeway. One of them is very good. One of them is just bad design, and the game in general would benefit on both of these issues if they would be willing to build a little bit more complexity into their skill progression systems currently in the game.
Yeah, is something like the nice cube maybe a solution to that, to bring more depth or variety to it, if you don't want to make the skill tree too complicated? Or do you want to see more depth in the skill tree in general? Is that the better solution to the problem? What would that be?
I think sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think skill tree is good where it is, because that's like your introductory to the game, and it being simple really helps new players. But I think personally, I'd love to hear what you think, Rax, but I think the Paragon board system is ripe for a rework, and I might have talked about this before, but it just seems like they've reworked all these other systems, and the Paragon board is this red herring now that I think really needs some updating, and I think you could do a lot there. What do you think, Rex?
Well, yeah, I think kind of similar to what I just said, and kind of ties into what you said. I think the Paragon board is borderline solvable. Okay, I'm gonna play a Flurry Rogue. Can you make me a Paragon board? If we give Lucky an hour, DM an hour, me an hour, Chronix an hour. We can't see each other's work. We're not back in high school Spanish class. When we look at the Paragon boards at the end, the number of the glyphs that we took are going to be 90% the same. With the boards that we took are going to be very, very similar. If we took the total stats of all of our finished products, they're going to be nearly identical. That that alone, that statement alone, just shows you that the Paragon board it's really an illusion of choice. It's just not there. It could be spiced up tremendously. In my opinion, so I'll go counter to what Lucky said. What Lucky said is true. The fact that the skill thing is the first thing that you interact with, and the fact that it is basic, helps the masses. So that is a true statement. But to me, the most fun part about the fun part about Diablo games is the skills that I'm using and collecting loot. The collecting loot has been a catastrophe. I was picking up yellows forever. We don't have a loot filter. The Uber Uniques, they had to go through the stupid boss ladder. Couldn't resummon the boss. There's no beam for the Uber Uniques when I drop it. I have to pick up the unique, mouse over it, and that's my dopamine hit. It's a total buzzkill. They've been working on that. The part that they really haven't been working on is the skills. The only way for a skill to be very interesting to me is to get one of these really cool uniques that they've built now. The axial conduits, the fractured winter glasses. If I don't have that, my skills don't get interesting. I wish part of it was making the skills interesting within the skill tree itself at a certain point. I think the crazy simplicity of the skill tree hurts the game.
I like that you said at a certain point there, and maybe it could be something that you unlock later in the game or something like that, where you could still keep it basic for a player that's just starting out, and then as you progress further, maybe once you complete your Paragon board, you get additional little tweaks that you can do. And, yeah, not everything has to come from items, and not everything has to come from your skill tree. Maybe there's a good marriage of a combination between the two that could work better, because you really just end up handcuffing yourself with these uniques, right? Like I lose this item spot because I have to put it on an item, and that's my only option. I don't have a choice there, where something like what you're describing sounds like it could be better.
I mean,
No answer.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'll just answer Chronic's original question about the Kanai Cube portion in Diablo 4. And I don't know, man. I don't think that would really do anything. Because I feel like all that really does is make it where everyone's a barbarian now. We all get 3 more aspects. And so you would have the same aspects, just more of them. I don't know if it necessarily would add a ton more complexity as much as it would just add like a bunch more damage, basically. So I think I'm in the board here with Lucky about like the Paragon board, and with Rex with the Paragon board. For me, I kind of feel like maybe either a full rework, or hopefully, I'm curious what they're going to do, because they did say they're adding like more Paragon stuff going into the X pack, right? There's going to be new Paragon boards, new glyphs, etc. Maybe that will mix it up. Maybe we'll get more total additional Paragon boards that actually give us some variety to it. I still imagine it's going to be min-max down to like, this is the Paragon board that everyone's using for this board, and it'll be solved once again, and then just the numbers will move around. But, one can hope.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's think about the skill tree system for a second here. So what exactly are you doing here? So you go through, and let's say you're going to play Blizzard. Well, you have a choice of, do you max Blizzard, or do you click it up to 5, or do you not? Then usually you click the enhancement. It's just a free thing that you must choose to get to one of 2 choices. And then what do the choices usually say? Oh, Blizzard lasts 4 extra seconds, or Blizzard applies vulnerable, or something. Like, those things are nice, but those things are not exciting. Like, I need you to let me in the skill tree make some real choices that change how Blizzard works. If you choose normal Blizzard, where you point your cursor, a Blizzard drops. When you choose some other kind of a Blizzard, glacial Blizzard, or whatever it is, it follows on top of you, and maybe you don't have to, and it follows on top of you when you summon it once. And when you press it again, it redirects the ice crystals and throws it as an ice lance. So you choose one or the other. It actually fundamentally changes how you play the game Now, I understand that me asking for this for all the skills for you to actually make it this interesting requires a ton of development time. The resources to do something like this would be outrageous and probably would need to be done like as an entire expansion. But to me, making a choice like that about like Dust Devils, regular Dust Devils throw forward in a line and the other ones orbit you and shoot out in random directions like a super hurricane or something. That to me is way more interesting as like a base choice than 4-second increased duration or it applies vulnerable or not.
Yeah, which
So
basically
you want.
Go ahead, DM.
Crocs.
No, go, you go.
I was just going to say,
Please.
it basically sounds like their design philosophy that you're explaining here is the one that they have around uniques, that they said they want people to build around uniques, but then build their legendaries, basically. But you would kind of prefer that to be woven into the base skill?
I would like a way to modify the skill in a skill tree where the skill's functionality changes. It doesn't need to be necessarily the unique piece where, oh, now it does double damage or now it spawns conjurations that throw it. Like the crazy stuff can go on the uniques. But why isn't there an upgrade that actually changes the true functionality of the skill itself? So you're actually making a decision. So DM playing Bernie Firewall versus Rax playing regular Firewall actually looks different on the screen.
I think you can do this without changing much of the current skill tree, because right now it's like when you go to enhanced or advanced, whatever, those like the two options always, it's like, okay, you deal 15% more damage or you move 15% faster. But why can't those also say, okay, you deal 15% more damage and it splits to one enemy, or hey, you move 15% faster, but you also can do a dash here and there. Like you
That's
don't have to change it too much, right? To just implement these functionality changes into what already exists instead of just like damage all the time, right? Why is it always just damage? It doesn't really feel like a meaningful choice. Yeah.
Another thing is like to try to marry a bunch of ideas. This just magically came to me, so this might be a terrible idea in a vacuum, and it would need to have an evolution. What if we said, all right, guys, in the Infernal Hordes in Season 5, when you're playing a class, it has a chance to drop a greater skill glyph. You have no idea what you're going to get. So, you're playing Blizzard Sorcerer, and it's a very rare drop. And all of a sudden, big beam of light, boom! You just dropped Greater Firewall glyph, and you're like, oh my god! Then you attach it into your skill tree, and it just makes it way better. Like Firewall now spawns a giant Diablo star every time you cast it, and you're like, "Oh shit! I got the Greater Firewall star. Fuck it, I'm respecting Firewall." And you just made one of these for all the skills, and that was the season theme. And you have an endgame item chase with a unique reward for Infernal Hordes to go find these greater skill glyphs that you socket into your skill tree. And Blizzard, does crazy stuff. It now shoots fireballs, and it shoots lightning, and it shoots the ice thing. It throws all three elements now. So now the enemies are automatically burning and chilled, so you can spec out of your firebolt enchantment. I mean, something like that, man. Like something, like anything.
I thought they were kind of going to go that way after Season 3, to be honest. We saw the pet with like the runes, the socket, basically the support gems, as we were all calling it, right? For the pet. So I thought, oh, they're testing this. Like that was my logic of it. They're testing to have modifiers for skills. And we were all kind of a little hyped about, support gems are coming to D4, and then kind of just went away.
I fully agree with that idea. That would have been great. I mean, the good idea would be now to Rex pre-type what he just said and then upload it, and then we can all Control-C and Control-V it in our PTR feedback. How about that? We just unite and we make it happen. That would be great.
I mean, bro, if we sit down, if we just sit down, I mean, this is like a 5-second idea. If you sit down and you just extract all the ideas, just throw them into a pool and sort them, concatenate them and filter them and discuss, we can come up with maybe even way better ideas than that. This is just like 5 seconds. Like, there's so many possibilities that we're missing out on. I am so sick of 10% attack speed, man. Can we get something fucking going here? Come on, man.
15% attack speed. 16% attack speed.
God damn it, man.
Yeah, I really like what you said earlier. I want them to sit down. I mean, maybe they are doing that right now, right? Like, we know the season 4 team is right now coming up with basically like high, not crunch time, but they are probably in that stage right now where they are going like, okay, what are we doing? Or what are we? I just really hope they sit down and say, okay, give me your craziest Sorg class fantasy, for example, or rogue or whatever. And then they sit down and say, as a rogue, I want to have the full, I want to see poison everywhere. And then it sticks to the targets or whatever. And then it does little AoE explosions and then just bring it into the game. Like, that would be amazing. I would love that. And especially if you pair it with these glyphs that Rex said, it wouldn't really be too complicated, right? I think you wouldn't really make it too hard for the entry-level player. You could get that in the Infernal Hordes that are already available in World Tier 3. You would probably get one of the, not the greater one, but maybe you would get like a normal affix or skill glyph or whatever you're going to call them. And then they can try and see, oh, do I like this? And then they slap it on and they go like, oh, wait, I actually like that. Okay, let me respec now fully. This is looking cool. I want to play this, right? That would create not only diversity, but also it would foster the curiosity of people to try and go with something they have just found. Usually the build is already done while you're going through the game, and it's not going to be like, oh, what is that item? Can I do something with it? That moment is currently not really happening, and I think the glyphs would actually encourage that. That's a really good point. Now, speaking about classes, we do have quite a lot of class changes coming up. We do have a rogue main, a speed level main, and DM has actually been branching out to quite a lot. We have the Immortal Sorg. We've seen Immortal Sorg. We've seen the Necros, the Druids. I don't even. What would you consider your main, DM?
A druid. I mean, definitely,
okay.
I'd play druid more than anything. Yeah.
That's actually not that bad.
Poor bastard.
I know.
Yeah,
17 damage from day one, baby.
Well, there was a little bit of light there when we had the Tornado Druid. That was great. But yeah, it's not much since.
It's a moment. We had the moment in the sun, and Pulverize was kind of okay in season 2, I guess.
True. Yeah, it's actually a little bit better now, I'd say, after the mid-season patch. But yeah, obviously the class changes that we have seen for the season 5 PTR, especially for you, DM, then as a druid main, are a little bit rough on the edges. Did anyone figure out what they are trying to do with going into season 5? Is it just something like we throw something out there?
So I got a leak from Blizzard. They sent me a text. They said Sorcerer was a mistake and Druid's not far from it, and that they're trying to remove both of those classes from Diablo. Yep. But no, the truth of it is, like, okay, someone actually did the math. I forget who it was, but that technically we actually gained damage, even though that Shepherd got nerfed. People are feeling bad about it because Shepherd was, like, a lot of people were using Shepherd, right? Especially on two-hand, etc. And then you had the whole pet thing. So then they nerfed the pets, which was actually a bug. And now you don't have Shepherds again. So it feels like a nerf. So that one kind of hurt for people that are using Shepherd at the moment. But you don't actually use Shepherd in like all the variants of the build. And then the Thunder, what was it? Thunderstruck, I believe. It caps now. And I think that was like a 50% nerf into that as well. But they buffed everything else. So it's kind of like it's like a grab bag, dude. Like there's some like, oof, like why? Why Debilitating Roar got this massive nerf? But then they move the survivability to all the other things. So you're like, okay, I guess, all right. And then, they buff all the other things, but then Thunderstruck gets nerfed, then Shepherd gets nerfed. So it's not as bad. I guess mathematically it's supposed to be better, but it's some of it just feels bad because you're as a druid, you're kind of feeling like you're already getting shit on, and then you just see stuff that you're using getting changed, and you're kind of like, that doesn't feel very good.
Well, another thing about druids is I don't understand. So they said that they were going to start cooldowns at the end of their cooldown to prevent you getting an infinite of
Grizzly
anything.
Rage.
And then they put it to Grizzly Rage. It's like, guys, it's not one glove fit all. You're supposed to have Grizzly Rage up all the time. This isn't Flame Shield from Sorcerers. You can't apply the same fix to every single cooldown. You just screwed over Druid players.
I didn't realize I was immune, apparently, in Grizzly Bear form. It doesn't make any sense to me either. I was kind of wondering that.
And another thing about the Shepherds thing, like, I'm not trying to needle the Druid community. Druids need help. You got, like, I'm 100% on board to advocate for that. We need to buff Druids, but people get mad when Blizzard makes changes that must be made. Shepherds is horribly designed. For every companion you have, you get 20% damage to all of your core skills. It's stupid. You just take Shepherds always and take as many companions always. You have no build diversity. It must be nerfed, so they buff the skills up so you hopefully wouldn't lose damage. Now, never trust Blizzard math. That's what the PTR is for. If you actually ended up getting nerfed, we need to complain about that. But by God, don't complain about Shepherds being changed, because it would have screwed you over forever if it would stay in the game. You know what I mean? Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, to take all the companions and then do it just so your Were Natal does better did feel a little bad. Fundamentally, in concept, it's a good change.
Especially because you were looking at the action bar of every druid player and you saw the same 4 or 5 skills almost, kind of. But yeah, I mean, the Shepherd change is definitely great, but it feels, I don't know how it feels to you. To me, it feels, when I look across all of the classes, it looks like they looked at the numbers and typed in, filtered by what is used the most per class, and then they went like, top 1 and 2 things get nerfed in terms of aspects or skills like that, and not really seeing the repercussions of that.
I definitely feel. Sorry, go Dan.
No, you go, Lucky. You haven't spoken.
Oh, I was gonna say, I could almost agree with you there, Chronix, on that thought that maybe they looked up something and that's what that's what a lot of these buffs and nerfs were dependent on, because Rogue, coming from being a Rogue main, at the beginning of this season, everyone said Rogues are going to be like the worst class in the game. Turned out they were actually really, really good. Maybe only second behind Barb. But they ended up buffing so many things on the Rogue that maybe didn't even necessarily need it because the class was so good. And then the inverse of that is that Necro really got hit hard, where actually I don't even really think Necro is that great of a class. And then they got all of these nerfs that really I think are hurting the class. But I will say that I don't think it's a coincidence that Adam Jackson was playing Rogue this season, and Rogue actually got a lot of quality of life improvements. It feels like finally someone at Blizzard is playing the Rogue class themselves, and they're making some meaningful changes, and they actually understand now how the class works. They're not just nerfing anything that they see is performing maybe too strongly. Some of the changes I agree with, some of the changes I would say I disagree with, but you do wonder how some of these decisions are made. And I'll say one last thing is that all of the balance changes that we're seeing so far, they're not going to be the final versions, right? The PTR is so important. If you're really feeling down about a change that you're seeing, the PTR is so important to test it, get your feedback together, have it be critical, concise, and get that message off to Blizzard, get it to your favorite content creator, or go on the forums and share it to them directly yourself, so that we can enforce the changes that we want, and we can help kind of mold the game how we want it. So I wouldn't feel too down about anything. There's still time to change it, and that's kind of where I feel with the balance changes. So just keep giving feedback, and the PTR is going to be so important for that.
So I have a guess as to why do they change these certain things that maybe at the end of the game don't necessarily need a buff. I think that, again, it goes back to they grab a lot of the data from the masses. most people, even with the leveling changes, are still not level 100. So then they gather the data of what is it like for flurry rogues that are not level 100, and that's going to be the vast majority of their data. And even if flurry rogue is only 5 pit levels behind the barb, Blizzard will say, okay, well, if we buff flurry might end up being number 1 in the pit, but we're absolutely willing to pay that price to help all these struggling rogue flurry players in the early game, because our data says that they're quitting or they're having trouble or their clear times in the nightmare dungeons are way higher. So we got to give it a dash. We got to give it a lot of extra buffs. That's where I think the data comes from. That would be what I think is the main thing that they point to. And it is not a coincidence. I know that this happens, where when the Blizzard devs actually get around to playing the different builds and they experience it for themselves, then the very next patch, that's usually when you see, oh yeah, this does feel like dog shit. They were right. I better change this.
Yeah, I'm going to set up a tracker that tracks what Adam Jackson is playing, because he was playing Flurry Rogue this season. So there we go. You can basically Magic 8-Ball predict what is going to get a big overhaul if you follow him on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah,
that was quite interesting. I have to go back and see what he played in season 3, and if that was available. I need to check that. If that was Minion
he probably
Necro,
played Minion Necro. Yeah,
exactly. Then my theory kind of holds true here. So we will have to check the Twitter here. I'll be on it for sure. But I mean, isn't that exactly what you kind of want to have? I think that's a good step in the right direction,
No,
right? Like
I want 5 Adam Jacksons playing every build every season. I don't want one Adam Jackson playing one build and then that's the class that gets updated really good every single season. I love Adam Jackson. I'd love 5 of them. 6 one Spiritborn comes. I don't think that is the answer. I'm sorry, Chronix, for interrupting there, but it's just something that I felt so strongly about. Like, we shouldn't only have one Adam Jackson. I think Blizzard could spring for it. Like, I would love to see meaningful changes like the Rogue is getting for every class, and I don't even play them. I would just love for everyone to have that.
I mean, it goes back to a concept like when I had my 9-to-5 job. I was for a couple of years, I was an underwriter at an insurance company. And there are tests that you can take to kind of prepare you for being an underwriter, right? And so people would apply to come be an underwriter. And I could tell you, without talking to anybody, I could always tell you who was going to be the most impactful on the team when they come in right away. It is never the people who take tests and think about being an underwriter. It's always the people who have been an underwriter before. Experience is infinitely better than just sitting in a classroom and being educated about what should happen. It's just, it works in all facets of life. So we could sit here and make tons and tons of Word docs and spreadsheets for Blizzard and say, we all cumulatively played this for 1,000 hours, and these are our findings. But that's nothing compared to if the Blizzard team just goes plays for 100 hours and tests it themselves and then goes to make the changes. It works this way in every facet of life.
I gotta point out and defend him here a little bit. I've seen multiple posts of multiple level 100 characters for a lot of Blizzard devs. So they are doing right what we asked them to, right? So I want to... I'm glad they have identified what Rag says is going to be key to keep pushing D4 into the right direction. I just wanted to point that out, right? Like it's not only one Adam Jackson here that is trying to do that. We see... Go ahead, Rex.
I was going to say, and that's exactly why the seasons have been better. And the patch
100%.
notes have been, in general, better than they have been before.
100% agree. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the new edition that everyone was so hyped about when we saw him on the season 4
Colin.
PTR stream.
Legend.
Colin, I think, right? Exactly. And you can Like we see this new we see these new faces that are coming in, and we see the change that is actually happening. So unfortunately, I think there's just a little bit of time, or maybe even a lot of time, that we need to give them to be able to make the changes that we kind of want for the game, especially when it comes to class balance, because, well, there's probably a lot of stuff to do, not only when it comes to class challenge. So the time to play the flurry rogues and the minion necros is probably very limited in their free time, I guess. I wish we had the option to provide, or to provide them more of that experience somehow, or more free time to get that experience.
You guys are forgetting the most important point, though. It's an odd numbered season this time.
I've actually heard, they made a post in the Discord. They said that they understand why, and I guess I'm part of the problem. I've pushed that narrative a lot because, I don't know, they told us, they said something about it like 1 year ago, but they said that's actually not how their thing is structured. They said like the even and the odd teams get like a ton of hate. Like the even team is actually the good team. They said that internally that's actually not how it's structured. They said they were going to clarify it in a campfire chat, but they still haven't. So I don't know how it works. I just know that meme is actually not how it works. But honestly, I'm okay with just keeping it anyway, because I mean,
it's a good meme, man. You just gotta spin into the meme.
I mean, if Druids become the best class, there's still going to be the 17 damage class. It's never going to change. It doesn't matter.
It's definitely looking like that. If we compare season 4 and season 5, I definitely have to play into the meme being actually true. I also, when I first saw the patch notes for the season 5 PTR, I was like, yeah, well, I mean, it's an odd number. There you go, right? But I mean, maybe go. Let's play the season 5 PTR first before we really go and say like, yeah, okay, it's an odd season. There we go. I'm really hoping that we can make it work with the feedback that we are going to provide as a community. And I mean, if I looked at season 4 PTR and then what we actually got, I think there were quite a lot of small improvements that actually happened and made the season the success it actually has. So we have the chance again to make an impact and try to improve it as much as we can as a community. I guess that's a very good opportunity to take, and we should definitely grab it. Really looking forward to that.
So one thing to say something nice. Hopefully I'm not known as like the evil negative Nancy. One thing to say something nice about Blizzard is I was kind of expecting season 5 to kind of be pretty meh, because they said they prepped us ahead of time. It's only a 2-month season. The big expansion is coming. If ever there was a time to kind of not try very hard, it would have been season 5. I mean, I read the patch notes. They're not perfect, but the magnitude of the changes, the new Endgame mode, one that might actually be pretty fun. I'm actually pretty pleased with the amount that they put into the season. I thought they could have gotten away with doing a lot less. So I give Blizzard credit for, I guess, not sleeping on it and actually caring to make something exciting.
Agreed. My concern was going to be season 5 is season 4 2.0, and that the whole season 5 mechanic is going to be they're just reworking tempering and like making season 4 better. It's like, I just kind of hope, I'm like, please don't have that be the case. So when I saw there was a game mode, there's kind of I know there's, I could talk about rewards and all that, but like that's literally what I want is more game modes. So I was pretty satisfied seeing it, other than, I would love to see Druids become triple S tier, but we'll see one day.
No.
Come on, man. You can't take you take a hope from man, and there's nothing left.
Not gonna happen.
I was trying to pinpoint exactly what I wish for in a season 5 before we actually got around to any kind of information, and I settled to, well, it's gonna sound like not that great, but like I was like, I'm super happy if I just with finger marks here, I just get a loadout and an auction house and a leaderboards, like a combination of those two things, and I could have replayed season 4 with those additions. If you slap on a boss now is able to be resummoned, I can actually play season 4 for like 4 or 5 weeks again, especially because it's the season that is shorter and before an expansion where we are gonna get these bigger changes.
I was a little bit concerned with losing the Iron Wolves and how that was going to feel in season 5, because I think not a lot of people really actually consider what that means. And what it meant was you had this way of target farming Uber Uniques, for instance, getting that starter set item, or like that almost that starter set of affixes that you could use to make a cohesive build, something that's similar to like how Diablo 3 works, where you just get, you know, a set each season, and you can function that way, and it gives you a little introductory to theory crafting. But I think they actually addressed a lot of the concerns that I had with losing the Iron Wolves, such as more available Uber Uniques from a lot of different sources and other things like that. So I was pleasantly surprised that they took all of that into consideration, because I was a little worried that that wasn't getting enough attention.
I think there's a fine balance here that Diablo has kind of not been capitalizing on. So a lot of times when we've had a season in the past, we really haven't seen that season come back. This is development time to make something interesting for the game, and a lot of times we essentially just see it go poof. For example, no one really liked the Malignant Hearts, but the way that they brought it back was they just gave you a couple of rings for it. The Vampiric Powers, which a lot of people liked, again, they just gave you a couple of the powers, I believe, on legendary aspects, and then it's gone. So PoE, by contrast, they remove the season. Sometimes they tweak it. Sometimes they reintroduce it to the game. And PoE kind of does the exact opposite. They try to bring everything back in some form, but then over the years, it turns into a lot of bloat, right? The game is super bloated. It's impossible for new players to get into it. It's very difficult. So I think both of these strategies are not exactly right. So, for example, let's go to the vampire powers. When I was leveling, God, I can't remember what it was called. What was the godly leveling power called in
Hemomancy?
Yeah.
Hemo. Thank you. So Hemo, I thought, was a great addition to leveling. It wasn't really that good in the end game, but it was a very cool power for leveling. It's like shooting blood chain lightning out. And I thought that the UI was bad, but I thought the idea of the progression system of the vampire powers felt just right. You slay vampires, you get the blood or whatever, and then you upgrade it to 2, and then after a while you upgrade it to 3. It's a meaningful upgrade, and it makes you feel good about playing your character. I was saying this over and over and over in feedback and videos and podcasts. Blizzard, it's not just about bringing back one little power and putting it on a legendary. I miss the progression system. I miss feeling good about slaying 5,000 vampires in the season so I can finally get my level 3 hemos. So if I ever want to level another character, I have level 3 blood chain lightning or whatever. It's not just about bringing back pieces of the season. What about interesting ways to develop our characters? And if we're worried about power creep, which is a legitimate concern, well, the major power creep we have is, you know, a lot of the classes are still hitting for billions and billions and billions. First of all, before we solve that, that's always going to be a problem. But I think there is a good way to balance bringing new things back, bringing some of the progression systems back, keeping the power creep in check. I don't think they've been capitalizing enough on the development time of the seasons. Thank God that we've already heard that the Infernal Hordes seems like it's going to be a core system in the game, because I believe it's also launching for Eternal. We got to stop putting in development time and then throwing it away. We got to do more with it, but we don't want to end up being bloat like Path of Exile.
Yes, sure. I've tried understanding now after we've seen the bigger picture of what is coming before the expansion. And I kind of like now looking back at season 1, 2, 3, although season 1, 2, 3 have had their positive points, doesn't it feel like they just had to fill season 1, 2, and 3 somehow? And that's why we don't really see it coming back, except with aspects. In terms of comparing it to season 4 and season 5, we got something new, a new permanent addition to the game, like Pit and the Infernal Hordes in season 5. Can they now, when they have added something like that, with the expansion, go back and say, okay, the stuff that is going to give you the progression that Rex mentioned is now going to be baked into Infernal Hordes? Will we get something new into the Pit that is going to be leveling up a different type of system? That may be something that they had or have in mind for the future. Is that something that can be attached to these game modes that are now suddenly being added when they weren't in season 1 and 2 and 3?
I mean, I think so, because I feel like that's kind of what they've been doing. Like, season 1, we had Varshan. He came back, and like the Malignant Heart stuff did come back, just not in the tunnel variant. But then in season 2, we got Lord Zir. Lord Zir's back. We got some of the aspects back from it. The whole progression system, to Rax's point, was kind of thrown to the side. Season 3, we didn't really get too much of season 3, but if you look at the Helltides is a mix of mechanics from season 2 as well as season 3 that were also added in there. So I feel like they're trying to take the bits that were well received and the boss progression. The one that I'm curious as to why it didn't come back was the end of season 3 boss. His name's escaping me right now.
Malphus.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a cool fight, honestly. I was kind of hoping that would come back in some variant. Maybe we'll see it in the next season. I don't know, but I quite liked that one.
Except the running towards it, or like doing the
fair enough.
For
fair
separate
enough.
things. Yeah, but it was actually a tough fight. Like I was, that was, if we don't look at Lilith, that was actually the toughest boss fight in terms of you have to dodge here, and if you get hit, it really hurts. And then it was actually quite hard to take him down because the HP wasn't even that low, especially considering that you had so much power baked into the construct, permanently giving you infinite resource and also and permanent 50% multiplier, right?
It was visually appealing too. I felt like it was just a pretty good design. Like it felt unique. Some of the other ones kind of feel like loot pinatas, like a robot. You go, you just poke him, a hole in him, and he bleeds out all this loot. Like that one actually kind of felt like, hey, there's something going on here. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more of a fight.
Recycle more. Bring back Astaroth too from the campaign. I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. It's a good idea. Like, who knows? Some of these boons and banes that we get in the not the banes, but the boons that we get in the Infernal Hordes might be blood powers from Season of Blood. Like, I hope that they do things like that. That'd be really cool. Like, one of them you choose Hemomancy, but the enemies get to use it too, or something like that. It'd be cool.
I think so if I'm gonna conceptually. That to Chronix's question, conceptually, that's what I would like them to do. If you meant the question literally, in the expansion, are they going to bring back stuff from the past? If I was on the team, I would say no. And the reason why is that those ships have sailed, and the community's sentiment is going to be, oh, in season 6, we're building in these new progression systems, or we're bringing back the vampire power progression system. Now people are going to say, wow, you're so unoriginal. You didn't have any time to think of something new. So if it's something very specific, like they missed by far my favorite vampiric power. When they said, oh, all your vampiric powers are coming back and Hemo wasn't one of them, I was like, are you kidding me? You brought everything back except for my favorite one. I just think it as a go forward conceptual philosophy, that's what they need to do is how do we build these things into a season? And then how do we package it up as a pretty little bow to continue forward? like DM said, they have been doing it to some degree. Like Lucky said, the magnitude at which they've done it and the fact that they keep scrapping the progression systems is what is perpetually puzzling to me.
To your point about the expansion, if they repackaged everything into the expansion, then sold back to the people what they had already played in the previous seasons, that would be the worst decision they could possibly make.
You would be paying money for what you already paid for because people are already mad that they paid $70 for the base game. Yeah,
that would not go very well.
Yes.
I totally agree. I probably wasn't precise enough with the question. I was more so like trying to say that now that we have these new systems in game or adding on top of these new systems, the expansion is going to expand on that. And then maybe we have enough systems that can then get a progression system that contributes your character's power level or somehow in a positive way. And then they can attach that to the new system, right? Is that a theme going forward into the expansion?
God, I hope so.
Yeah, I definitely hope and think so too. I think we've seen these little the little system being repeated over and over, right? We're bringing back the stuff, especially I think with the Helltides, right? They have extracted the good parts and brought it back and iterated multiple times on it, right? We had the Vamptides being the new Helltide, and now we have the full Helltide replacement. So there is definitely something being done there that I think is just going to get accelerated after the expansion.
You guys, kind of a random topic, but you guys pretty hyped for the expansion? Like the new Spiritborn class and all that? You want to talk about the expansion for a second? Because I'm kind of hoping Spiritborn is pretty pog. Maybe it'll be what we all want Druid to be.
I'm so looking forward to playing something besides Rogue. Like, I love the class, don't get me wrong, but playing the same class every season, I do it to myself, but I am really looking forward to testing out a new class, and Spiritborn is the perfect opportunity to, because I like to get in right when a new character is there, and I like to find the builds and test a bunch of stuff. And for a theory crafter, introducing a new character is the best thing you could do. Like, I could go play Barb, I could go play Necro, but it's been theory crafted to eternity at this point. So getting that opportunity of a new class is an experience that you don't get often. I'm really looking forward to that.
For me, Spiritborn is actually a dream come true. Like I'm really setting myself up for failure here because I'm getting myself way too hyped, and every time I've done that, it hasn't turned out well. But I'm just gonna keep going down the path. I had a video a long time before Diablo 4 came out. People were asking me, Rax, if you could add a class, what would you add to the game? And I said a shaman. Because I was shaman main in WoW for a bajillion years. I want the enhancement shaman. I want the elemental shaman. Then people say, well, just play witch doctor. No, witch doctor sucks. Oh, just play druid. A druid is not a shaman. It's not the same at all. When I look at the very limited info we have on the Spiritborn kind of looks like a shaman kind of mixed with a Diablo 3 monk, which is one of my favorite classes. So if the Spiritborn plays like a WoW shaman at all, mixed with a monk, I think this is the only possible class they could add into Diablo 4 that would be better than Barb for me. So this is kind of a dream come true, exactly what I wanted. And I'm praying it goes even a half as well as I'm anticipating that it will. And it'd probably be my new main forever. No matter what they add, I'll probably be a Spiritborn main because this is what I wanted, man.
So does that mean as soon as we see a totem being put down as the first frame of the video, that it's gonna be the release trailer? I have to watch your stream then, because you're gonna be ecstatic, Rex? Is that how it's gonna go?
It
opens up, putting down a totem, and you see Rex go, yes.
I spent a lot of years of my life, man, playing shaman. It actually emotionally, it's sad to admit, it just shows you how much of a loser I am. It actually emotionally means something to me. So if it plays like a shaman, There's nothing you could have done that would have made me happier.
I'm really curious how they are going to do it, because I have never played Immortal, but I have seen the new class. I forgot the name, but it's some kind of Tempest. It's a water weaving, very roguelike, melee heavy, also casting type of stuff. And this is kind of the craziness that we were trying to have with the uniques and the aspects. So if they can somehow take that and put it into the new class that is coming to D4, I would be extremely happy. I'm just very curious if they can pull it off with the theme. I think it's supposed to be a melee character, and I think with a melee character, I'm not sure if you can really do all of the cool stuff that a ranged character can do, because, well, you're close range. You gotta be agile, and then, I don't know, it's forcing you into some sort of direction. I think when you cast lightning or whatever, you have way more options to go crazier than if you add a melee class. But hopefully I'm wrong, and I get completely excited when I see the class as well. It's talking about expansion, when it's about the, how did they call it, the group focused endgame activity. Is there something that you guys envision or hope for when it comes to that particular thing?
Not world bosses and more than 4 players, I think would be cool. Or something that makes clans a thing, or gives clans access to something. Not a requirement either. Like, I don't want it to be like you can only do it with your clans, and now people are stuck having to do clan finder and all that. But a reason to maybe have a clan, something that's more than just 4 players. It's not a loot pinata that falls over immediately. Hopefully it's like a raid from WoW, where you have to like go through something with multiple instances of challenges that maybe has puzzles or at least skill-based things. Worst case scenario, it's 8 people get instanced warped into a room. A big guy immediately comes out of the middle with 2 swords and then just goes like this for like 15 minutes, and he's just a big like meat bag. Like, that's worst case scenario.
Every time this topic gets brought up, I had to start laughing. So I can't remember where it was. It might have been like on the actual Diablo video or somebody's YouTube video. But the number one comment that I saw when they announced like these raids, someone said, players saying, "We want SSF." Blizzard says, mandatory forced grouping for the expansion activity.
Yeah.
And so that's all I ever think about when I hear about it. I mean, it should be fun. It should be fine. But that's for the rest of time, that's all I'm ever going to remember is that comment. We want SSF. All right, here's a forced group activity.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw that I saw that too. That is very interesting.
It was like the top thing by far, like 5,000 upvotes. I was like, oh my God, dude. Unbelievable.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about that desire to play a game and be able to do all the content yourself. And it is one of the most highly requested things, but that I get so much enjoyment by playing with others and the community. And like, one of the things that I have the most fun doing is every week we get together with the Diablo 2 guys, and we do world record attempts for an 8-player speed run through the game, right? And I consider it kind of like a raid, and it's something that I've done consistently now for years, and it's one of the most fun things that I do. And more experiences like that in a Diablo game, I think would give me a lot of reward. Like, it would be a very rewarding experience for me personally. And I played Lost Ark when I heard that. When I heard that Diablo 4 was going to have a lot of these MMO features, I played Lost Ark, and I used the max roll guides for that. Man, they were they were insane. Like, I felt like I knew everything. But those raid battles in Lost Ark were so much fun for me to do. Even when I was with a pickup group and we failed, like, they were a lot of fun. They were some of the most fun that I had in that game. And I played about 2 weeks pretty seriously until I got into the honing. That was rough, and I didn't continue playing that game for that reason. But the raid bosses themselves, like that was so much fun for me, and I would love to see something like that in Diablo 4. I think it worked well in Lost Ark, and I don't see a reason why it wouldn't perform well in Diablo 4. I understand you have to play together to do them, but that's something that I really enjoy, so I would welcome it.
For me, raids is always a very hard topic to really see. I really love the extreme challenge. I think of WoW, Mythic Plus, high-end world first raiding, for example, and also Lost Ark had one of the craziest boss fights I've ever seen. Like, if anyone is interested in seeing something crazy, you should watch Belshazzar hard mode from Lost Ark. You can watch that video like 20 times and you have absolutely no clue what is going on, but somehow these people are actually doing it and they solve puzzles left and right, and someone runs off because he has to bring a key to someone. And if I see that, I'm like, yes, I want something like that. But then I see the other side of the problem where I'm like, okay, now you're speaking of, I need to be there at this time because all the other people are relying on me being there, because without me, they can't do it. With a pickup group, you have to relearn all the mechanics. Then how hard are you going to make it? If there is difficulty sliders of some sort, then what are the rewards for the very high end? If you make them only cosmetic, then the incentive might be not as high as possible. I actually don't envy the developers to try and manage something like raids in any game, but more importantly in an ARPG where it's probably going to be a first iteration of its kind in an ARPG. I'm very curious how they are going to solve these problems that raids bring with them.
I don't think we're going to get anything nearly as difficult as some of those endgame Lost Ark bosses. By the way, shout out to Lost Ark. I think it's an underrated game. Like the pay to win sucks and the honing sucks, but the quality of some of the content there is. I'm a big Lost Ark fan, but especially because you have things like hardcore mode, and it has to be like possible to beat in hardcore mode, and you don't really, unless they build some kind of new mechanic, you don't get like a second try. You gotta like get it on the first try with your buddies, and if one person dies, if you have to have 8 people standing on the correct clock position and you don't do it and the whole raid wipes for it, it's not something that I think they're even capable of building into the game because of the structure of it. Unless, even in hardcore mode, you get a death within the boss, lets you redo the boss, unless they do something like that. That wouldn't be very hardcore-esque, but whatever. I don't think we're going to see anything nearly as difficult as we see in Lost Ark.
Which then is going to also make it very interesting how they are going to implement it, right? Like it has to go the easier route just because of these points. And then is it really going to be that satisfying? How mandatory is it going to be every week? Do you just log in, smash out the 3 or 4 or whatever bosses, and then get your material or loot, and then do it again next week? Can you refarm it?
Mandatoriness. Sorry, let me cut you off.
No, all good. Go ahead, Liam.
I was going to say the point about your mandatoriness is something I'd be curious about as well, because I mean you can already see it in your the chat here. It's if it's something that it's required, there are people that do not want to do raids, and if it is something that it is required to do with other people, there are people that do not want to play with other people. Then we have the problem of, like Rax was saying earlier, they're definitely focusing on the people that don't engage with build guides, have 10 minutes a day with 69 wives or whatever the meme is these days and age. So if those are the demographic of people, that's not really like meshing very well with the concept of forced requirement, 8-player social system with a hard thing. They even said in the interview, like Rax was saying earlier, that they're not going to build things that skill base can carry you as opposed to gear can carry you. Maybe they don't see raids that way. Maybe they're only talking about one-on-one fights. I don't know. But I'm kind of curious the mandatoriness of it as well, because if if they are going raids, we don't even know if it's raids. It could be World Bosses 2.0 for all we know. But if they are going raids, how exactly are they going to execute that? Like, I'm pretty curious about, and the rewards as well. You know, I mean, what the rewards are going to be interesting. If it's the only way to get whatever the new Scattered Prism or something is, like, I feel like some people aren't going to be very happy about that if it is mandatory and it is multiplayer required.
Yeah, so another potentially the most important thing that you have to keep in mind, which is kind of like DM's point connected to a DM point earlier, is you have to be very careful with the perception of this expansion because you're charging your player base another $40. So how the masses react to this expansion is so critical, especially now that they finally have some positive momentum and they're asking players to fork over another $40. So if this new endgame system does not please the masses, Blizzard is going to have a big HR, PR problem. So making it mandatory, making it super difficult, anything like that, if they do that, it's a dangerous line to walk conceptually. So I personally, even though if you have me vote for it selfishly, from my perspective, I want it to be as difficult as the Lost Ark bosses. I want to wipe on it 500 times before I finally kill it, and then I get like a flying dragon mount for killing it, and I get some godly item, and I get an awesome title. That's what I want. But that probably would not appeal to the masses, at least straight out the gate. So I'd be very surprised if we see it being super hard with a ton of restrictions for that reason.
Yep. I think the only real solution to that problem, if you even care about the top end, has to be a difficulty slider where the least difficult option can basically be almost soloed by one of the top guys, where you literally the only difficulty is assembling however many people you are going to need, and then you just walk through it. And then is that interesting? I don't know if that's worth the development time, if the entry level of difficulty is just that.
I'm curious about classes too. So if you have, there's no holy triangle, right, in Diablo. So it's okay. Let's say it's a raid 8. Then is it just whatever's the best class is going to be the only one people want to pick? So if you're not a barb, sorry, you're a sorcerer. Back of the line. You're not going to get in this group.
Yeah, that's like the can of worms with that raids brings, right? Like everyone wants to have the best composition, even though you can just literally turn off your monitor on the first difficulty, and it's still everybody wants just 8 barbs, for example, right?
I think the way that I would approach this maybe is kind of to like incrementally introduce the ideas or the difficulties into this new system. Like, for example, let's just start with like some basic teamwork stuff. Like, if one of the bosses is Diablo, if Diablo raises his hands, if half of the people DPS the left hand and the right hand, and you DPS it equally, then you do like triple the stagger and you do more damage. Or Diablo locks some people in a cage, and you might say, oh, I'll just leave Jim Bob in his cage. Jim Bob is a druid anyway. He doesn't do any damage. But while someone is in a cage, that guy could potentially die, and the boss takes 30% reduced damage. So now all of a sudden, it's actually a DPS increase to help out Jim Bob. Just basic things like that, where let's introduce some teamwork into the game, some pretty obvious teamwork that's not that hard. And then we can step it up little by little by little. Okay, we got your entry-level raids going here. Now let's see if you can do a hard mode Uber Diablo where it's crazy difficult. That would be conceptually my approach. Like, Let's make it more than a loot pinata world boss where everyone's just individually there waiting for the barb to just one-shot it. Let's introduce some real teamwork into the game where working with the other people actually means something for once.
Okay, guys, is there anything burning still on your mind that you want to discuss with the four of us, within the four of us? Else I would say we go and take a look at chat, everyone, and pick the best question that can maybe spark 1 or 2 more minutes of discussion per question, and we do like maybe 2 or 3 more, and then we wrap it up afterwards.
I have one question.
Sure.
It's for Lucky. So I'm assuming that is Bulbasaur, Charizard, and Squirtle.
Venusaur, man. Bulbasaur.
Bulbas, you're right.
Venusaur, man.
Venusaur. What is the grading? All
They're
right.
all
What,
tens, yeah.
Is that a first edition Charizard?
It is not.
Man, we had
I was gonna say.
so many of them in school.
I don't know if
back
it's
in
coming
the
up
days.
reversed, but
Gem Mint PSA 10. What a giga chat.
There it is.
yeah, the
We had
big
so
three
many of
there,
those when I was little.
I enjoy it. One of my buddies that I played Diablo with my entire life was big into collecting cards, and it was something that we did together. I lost them last year, and so the Pokemon cards mean a lot to me. I ended up displaying them on the stream, and I don't know, being an adult talking about Pokemon, I always felt like it was something that I couldn't really share with people. And since I put them out, like I love like DM that you asked me a question about them because they're really special to me. And I love talking about them. So thank you for that.
Everyone loves Pokemon.
I'm
and
realizing
Pokemon
that.
cards.
And I feel so
Everyone
much
does.
more comfortable like displaying them and talking about them. So
It's
yeah, I see the Squirtle back there. I love it. Yeah, it's behind Diablo and the Diablo series. The Pokemon series is one of my favorites of all time. So yeah.
Are you guys ready for a chat question from my audience? And then we could grab one from all of yours as well.
Sure.
You go for it, bud.
Okay, so Bullseye WB says, with them introducing raids in the expansion, could you see them adding more skills to characters that could lead to more of a group support type character? So do you think that they will do that? And do you think that they should do that? Let's start with Chronix, because Chronix been asking all the questions. Let's let him go first for once.
I gotta be honest, I really enjoy having the support playstyle in a game because that kind of like makes it so that you are, let's say there was a necromancer, a DPS necromancer and a support necromancer. You can choose to play a class within a class that way. I think you might actually not enjoy necromancer that much, but I sure hope that when you are more of a support type of character, you would definitely enjoy corpse tendrils, right? So I think it enables people that not necessarily want to try out a class for its DPS skills to try out classes for their utility spells. And that is a good thing, in my opinion, because it brings people, or it gets people to try out more classes because they might not necessarily like Bone Spear or Blood Surge, but they might like the utility stuff that the Necromancer provides. And I think that's a really, really cool concept for the player base.
I think maybe they're focusing more on it. There was a little wording they used during the campfire chat when they were introducing the new Barbarian unique, like the one that has like the cooldown plus that. And they said, this is for people doing like the, maybe like support style builds, etc. Which maybe in and of itself, maybe it's not a big deal. He's just mentioning that, but it was like, they're thinking about it. I remember thinking that it's like, they're thinking about support stuff. Like that's, he has that on his mind for whatever reason. So maybe, I think the answer to that is like, could they be implemented? Maybe they are actually thinking about that. Now, as to answer the second part of the question, which is that a good thing? I got two takes. I think it sounds more interesting when you're bored and you're like, I want to play with somebody. ZDPS sounds cool for like theory crafting. I can put this guy here and this guy. Maybe from like a min-max perspective, it's pretty cool. I remember, however, being like uber casual, even more than I am right now with D3. Okay. And when I was playing D3 and I saw this ETPS stuff, I just hated the concept. I was like, this is the stupidest shit. Like, I have to get in a group with some guy who does literally nothing except group them together. I just, as like someone just sitting there on the controller, like Whirlwind Barbie, I'm like, this is just stupid. So I've seen it where I didn't like it before as a casual. And I doubt casuals are really the type that really wants to even care about support stuff at all. But I also like, I can see it now, playing the game more about how it'd be kind of cool as a group.
Especially if we get like raids or something. So when I'm going to go back to the Diablo 2 example, I'm on a team of the world record holders for the fastest ever complete Diablo 2, 8 players through to hell. Everyone has a role to play in that event. A raid. It is a pseudo raid. There's 8 players. We all have a role to play. We have to execute on our role well to accomplish the goal of beating the game the fastest it's ever been done. There are players that do no damage. There's a barbarian in that group. The whole job of the barbarian is to give us battle orders so we're stronger. Like, that is their job. They have to do that. But there's also other things that they can do too. Like, ZDPS characters can be rewarding for the player because, especially if they are, needed or required, or you can just play so much more efficiency. When everyone has a role to play, you get really good at your role. It's fun to get together and be able to have that experience and, really work well as a coordinated team to accomplish a goal. And so I think that it's interesting that they've started down this path of support classes, because I thought I remember them saying it was not something they were interested in. Like, they weren't really interested in ZDPS builds. They don't want group play to outshine solo play. That's I think a direct quote at some point. So it's interesting to see this, especially ahead of this new like co-op Endgame system that they've hinted to in the expansion. So curious if that has anything to do with it, but I like it personally.
They did say in the very beginning of Diablo 4's development, that they did not want to make support characters. Yeah. So that it's like another paradigm shift. For me personally, I think so. I played a lot of different games. Played Diablo 2, played Diablo 3, played World of Warcraft, and one thing that you definitely pick up on as you play them for years and years and years is people like to play these games differently. Not everybody's idea of fun is the same to everybody else's. Even in a game like Path of Exile, for example, I have a couple of friends that only want to play Aura Bot. They just give you insane auras, and they just follow you around, and they make you hit 5 times harder, and they make you invincible. The same things that you see in Diablo 2 with the barbarians giving you battle orders and stuff. In Diablo 3, particularly, the entire endgame of group play is based around a support barb. The support barb is pretty much universally accepted as the highest skill cap, most important, hardest to play thing in the game. And it is so rewarding. It's my favorite thing to play by far. If you can put in thousands of hours trying to perfect how to manipulate these monsters and how to group them up so your DPSers can knock them down with area damage and manipulate the maps. It enabled a whole endgame leaderboard pushing system that would have been completely impossible and so much more boring if Blizzard had omitted it. With raids coming in, there will be people like a husband and wife, or a family, or some friends, where there's that one friend that just loves to play support classes. And if they could go into these raids and just keep everybody alive and debuff the boss, and they go do the little mechanic, put the orbs on the pedestals while everybody else maximizes their damage, some people will love that. And I don't think that's anything unique to casual versus blaster or pro player. I think people have different ways of enjoying the game all the time. I think it's a much better decision for them to enable builds like this, to enable different playstyles. I think it's a lot of benefits and very few drawbacks.
And I want to add something on there. I love playing tanks in MMORPG. I'm I don't know, kind of weird like that. I really love tanking. I understand that we don't have the Holy Trinity or whatever in RPGs. I fully understand that. But that's also kind of like this supportive playstyle of some sort, where you debuff, you take the aggro and stuff like that. So I really enjoy it myself quite a lot. And yeah, support. I mean, we already have something like that on Maxroll. We have a specialized build guide on for the druid. We have a support druid. We have actually seen it work very well in 2-3-man groups. So it definitely is moving in that direction, yes. And I think it's going to be a great addition for people that are looking specifically to play support classes. Because I know quite a lot of people that only play Aura Bot, only play healers, only play supportive type characters.
Yeah, it's like oh, let me throw one thing in here and then we'll go to DM. Like, for example, like a Thorn's Barb right now with a Doombringer can get to like 400,000 HP, right? So imagine if you just give him one thing, you just give him a taunt. Every time you hit a boss with Frenzy, they're taunted to you for 1 second. I mean, now when you go do the raid, when you see Thorn's Man doesn't do any damage, but he has 400,000 HP and he'll tank for you, that's going to be a big value add, right?
We'll instantly need to find another Necro guide writer if that is going to be the case then. For sure. I'm switching instantly. Sorry. DM, go ahead.
No problem. I was just going to add two things, which is one, Rex makes a good point, because what me and my girlfriend do when I'm not streaming is we play MMOs, and like I heal and she tanks, and I find that extremely appealing, like the concept of being able to play together. So when you were saying like there's lots of like husbands and wives that play together and they want to do, I'm like, you know what, you're right. That's actually like a good, like I actually do see that. And you're right. It's not really so much a casual thing, because there's lots of, casual, partners or stuff together that would probably enjoy that. The other point that I was going to make was that, okay, so if we do the raids thing, I was thinking about this, and I know there's a lot of like, oh, well, you got to build supports, and now they'd have to make support builds work, but they don't. I was thinking about, they really don't have to do all that. Like, they could just make it where, remember in Elden Ring, there's the Dragon Hunter Spear, and you pick up the spear, and it's only for that fight because it does something you need, which just gives you a large amount of range.
Serpent Killer or whatever.
Exactly, Rex. So they could do that same type of things for the raid, which is you pick up a weapon, it becomes your primary weapon. WoW did this as well, where it was like your class was dictated by like the tank that you were going to play in this one Udar raid or whatever it was. I forgot what it was. You get in a tank and, healing tank, DPS tank, whatever. So you could do that same concept in the Diablo raid, where it's just you go, I'm going to play support this time. You click on and you pick up the support weapon, and then now you're healing with whatever that weapon or something. Maybe you're not playing the build that you min-max to get in there, admittedly, but I'm just saying there's ways that you could get the role inserted within it without suddenly making the game a completely different game and adding holy trinities and adding different builds that bust everything else about the game.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That's like if any of you played WoW, it's like Kael'thas at the end of Tempest Keep, where they drop the legendary weapons, you pick them up, and then they do have superpowers or whatever.
And you could also play it differently. Like 1 week you could play that, and the other time you go in there, you play the different thing, and you don't necessarily have to reroll the class.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think here's the thing. So we always sit around here and talk about, okay, Blizzard, you really need to get your shit together. You really need to plan for all this stuff. You need to have everything ironed out. And every time you just willy-nilly release something, it's always a catastrophe, and then you have to redo it, right? But I'll say something a little bit dangerous. Some of the best things that have ever like emerged out of video games are not exactly planned. Like, for example, one of the most famous shooter games was Halo, right? And I believe the story on Halo is they put all the development time into the campaign, and they threw multiplayer together in like a day. They made some maps and said, okay, we'll run around and shoot each other. But the Halo 1 multiplayer was god tier. It was amazing, and it was just completely accidental. And when Blizzard was making Diablo 3, they didn't sit there and say, well, we want to make support barbarian, so we're going to design this specific stuff to make sure that it emerges as a real build. What happened is they just made some powers, and then the community created that archetype and it just ended up being godly. Then Blizzard looked back and said, well, everybody loves playing this and it's enabled a whole new endgame meta. I guess we just leave it, and they never nerfed it. So I think any of the three options could work. You could carefully calculate it and build it into the game. You could do exactly what DM said and put in little interesting objects or weapons that create the experience and how you want to use it. Or you can just think of some cool powers and throw them in there and let the community come up with it. And sometimes that third option is what generates the most interesting metas. I've seen it before.
Also same with Fortnite, right? It was a complete... I bought Fortnite back then for a completely different game than it is now. It's the same thing. Kind of like an accident. It was a zombie wave base defender type of thing. And now it's something like completely different, right?
Yeah.
Also more or less an accident.
Did Fortnite really? I'm laughing because I'm sitting here thinking about the single player variant that they had for a while, where you could go get all these materials and then build the houses. And there was this whole people were scamming each other in Fortnite to try to get materials to build a house. I was laughing about it because I remember seeing this YouTube video of this kid getting scammed for 9,000 springs or whatever the fuck it was. And he's just freaking out. My goddamn spring! Man, I was thinking about. You're right. Fortnite is not what it started at for sure. Now there's racing games and stuff. It's like a Roblox or something now. It's just it's like a hub for all these other games, right?
That makes total sense. Happy accidents. Maybe that's the way to go. Just try out stuff, right?
Every single thing doesn't have to be pre-calculated and planned. You could be like, all right, well, this legendary power, it makes you do more damage when you do this certain combination. I don't really know how this fits into the game, but here it is, and I challenge you, community. Try to make something with it. Here you go. Believe me, if they'll find it if it exists.
They did exactly that with the Mortar Crooks, and I sat down with Meg, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you want us to do with that thing. The new legendary for the next. I have no clue. I'm sorry, I don't know." so yeah, the tries are definitely there, I guess.
All right, in the interest of time, why don't I give us our next chat question then?
Sure.
And I do believe that Blizzard watches these and has a good sense of what the community is feeling. And this is a topic I think that is pretty important for me at least. And it revolves around the sense of community and keeping people in your game so they don't have to go to third-party sites to interact with the game that you're playing, right? You should stay in the game. And with that said, auction house or some sort of in-game trading platform. How about just quick pros and cons of adding that to Diablo 4 from this group? We'll start with Chronix. How do you feel on it?
RMT will go rampant, but I will finally able to sell my stuff and get some gold if I want to rapid fire it.
And I would say RMT is already rampant and will always be rampant. Like seriously though, it's always going to be a problem. So I would not base my solution around trying to solve a problem that is borderline unsolvable. Agreed. I think the pros here are way higher than the cons. I think it's a must add. It's kind of like loadouts. I think you just add it.
I'm sorry, but all the websites that I have seen that are for trading are really bad and don't work. I've literally had no one ever respond to me. I couldn't buy an amulet if I wanted it. The only way I always had to get this through the Sanctuary Discord. I don't have any problems with third parties solving solutions to games. This has been done so many times in other games. My favorite game of all time, RuneScape, literally had a better client that was made and it's now integrated into the actual, it's on the front page of Let's Go RuneScape. You can just use RuneLite. So, third parties can do a great job. This is a solution that I would like to see Blizzard handle. However, I think we should just have an auction house in the game. It works in other games. They leaned into the MMO thing. They're making things more and more tradable, but you don't actually have a way of doing the trade-in. So If they're going to go into trading, just go into trading. Yes, RMT is a problem, but I'm sorry. If you're spending money to buy gold in fucking Diablo 4, you're just an idiot. Like, why are we solving problems for the 1% of people that are spending $50 to your Durion mats to get an item that's going to be literally useless next season? I don't understand why you do that anyway, but I agree. Don't worry about those guys. Just make the game better for the people that are actually playing the game. And I think trading would go a long way, especially because when you get a really good item that doesn't work for your build, you could then sell it, get some gold through the auction house, and feel pretty good about that item. It's one of my favorite things of PoE. It's the only reason I played hardcore trade last week is I get an item and I really like the item. No, that looks like that's worth money, and I get a dopamine spike because it's worth money, even though it's worthless to me personally. So trading auction house would be a huge W.
Yeah, fully agree. Maybe I go with the next one. I've written it down, and basically, how do we feel about mercenaries being added? Are you a fan, or is it something that doesn't need to be in the game for you?
Don't
Maybe.
care either way. Honestly, I'm kind of like, mercenaries, cool. I'll try them. I don't really have not super excited about them. Don't think they're a bad idea. I'm just kind of like, meh.
Yeah, I think it depends on the implementation. Because like, think about the construct, right? That was our first mercenary. What did we do with the construct? It kind of just buffed us in most cases. I don't know that many. I think the bar was able to make the construct itself do crazy amounts of damage. That was pretty interesting to me, more so than just having a follower follow you around to boost you. I could do that in a million different ways. I don't need a mercenary specifically for that. I think if we do have them, they should be impactful. You should feel their presence more so than they're just buffing you. Mercenaries in Diablo 2 could be really, really strong. And Diablo 3, I think they played more in that like support-ish role. They kind of just buffed you. So I'd like to maybe see a shift into the back to D2 and maybe those like that construct when it was doing a lot of damage, something like that if we do have them. But yeah, it doesn't feel like an area that's really glaringly missing for me in Diablo 4. So if it's there, cool. If it's not, whatever, just make it interesting.
So, I mean, my sentiment is exactly what Lucky just said. So I think that it's completely based upon the implementation. And the biggest snooze fest for me for the mercenaries is if they're useless. This happens all the time. They give you a pet and it just doesn't do anything. They give you a follower and it really doesn't do anything. And I also think it's very, very boring when the follower is only there to buff you. I need the follower to be there. I need the progression of me working with my follower to actually feel kind of like a team thing. And I need him to do meaningful things by the end game after I've gotten him powered up. I don't want him to solo the boss for me, but me working on my mercenary has to matter. And if it's just to rebuff me, that's going to be kind of a snooze fest for me. Another thing that I will say is this is not an easy thing to balance. So if Blizzard gets this right on the very first try, that's going to amaze me. Not an easy task at all. I would not like to be tasked with that. But I want the mercenary progression to matter. I want him to actually do something. And I don't want him to just be there just to buff me. I want them to actually do something.
Do we have a last question, or was that it?
It's up to DM.
Let's see here. No one's really been leaving too many questions here for it. People are just more commenting on the talk here. So if you have a question, you can leave it. Kronks, if you got one, you can poll yours. Otherwise, give people like 15 seconds here. I'm sure they'll leave a question for the group.
Well, I have a question for DM. Have you ever heard of a biggie bag?
Dude, this shit again? You and your biggie bag, dude.
It's
I'm going to
important,
start
man.
ordering you. I have your address from the hoodies. So I'm going to start ordering you biggie bag after biggie bag after biggie bag every time you bring it up. And you're just going to be flooded by them because this is like the 15th time. They are a good deal, though, but they're not as good in Alaska. The biggie bag is not like $5 here. It's like $8.99 or something. We
This
get
seems like
scammed on.
I love this IRL mechanic that has just been added to my patch notes. I can think of many ways to abuse this. Every time I say Biggie Bag to DM, I'm going to get DoorDashed a Biggie Bag.
I didn't really think this one through. I'll be honest.
Okay, guys, then we'll wrap it up here. I want to thank you guys so much for your time. It was a pleasure. I hope we get to do this again in the future. Thank you guys so much. This will be uploaded to the maxroll.gg YouTube channel. If you guys could share that link as well on your Twitch streams real quick right after the talk, where we are also going to have some other content coming up, not only D4 related, but also for every other game that we have on the website currently. And yeah, if you have some famous last words, that's the time right now.
I like the background you got there, Chronix. Very clean, like with the color coming in from the bottom, and you got the pads and all that back. Pretty nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just thank you for having me. This was a really fun panel, really fun discussions today, and looking forward to season 5, eventually the expansion. Thanks again.
Make sure you get Elden Ring.
Oh yeah,
everybody.
It's on my list.
On my
Definitely
list now for sure.
And I by the way, I'm not exaggerating here. It's not a joke. When you fight Millennia and when you fight Mesmer and when you fight the final boss of the DLC, ping me on Discord.
Okay.
Ping me when you're fighting them. And
do you immediately get into, like, will you feel the DLC and the base game right when you start up, or do you have to beat the game first and then like you have the DLC?
You gotta get.
Okay.
You don't have to beat the game, but you have to get like pretty far into the original in order to unlock the
So I'm
area.
thinking like D2 when LOD came out, like you would have runes that you could get immediately in like the earlier stages, but it's not. So it sounds like it's like after
it's a whole area.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to get very, very far. You have to kill 2 of the hardest bosses in the game to unlock the DLC. It will be like, if you're going to stream it, it'll be a week-long experience minimum.
Yeah, I gotta find a free week, and then maybe there is something, maybe be after Last Epoch or something like that, and then I will have to dive in after today. I will not get around it. Stream would probably love it.
To play. I mean, even if the stream don't love it, like it's worth the play just for the hell of the game. Yeah. It's pretty fun, man.
I will. Thank you so much. Okay, guys. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the invite.
Bye.
Later.
It is just me left. All right. Teo, thank you for the raid. I have to wrap. This went over what I thought it would, but I want to thank everyone for hanging out, watching, giving us good questions and discussion points to talk about. And these have been a lot of fun. It's so nice to be invited to these panels, and I really like talking with everyone. So a lot of you have reached out after our last podcast and said it was pretty good content and to do more of it. So maybe we do more of these. I'd like to actually be playing the game more when I have time, when I have time to stream. But like time has been pretty tight lately. But season 5 PTR, I'm very excited to get in there and try out all the new rogue changes. So expect that content to come soon. Season 5 PTR can't come soon enough. I'm really excited about that. There's been so many good changes. We didn't get into too many of the details of each class because that would have been a lot. There's a lot to dissect, but I'm really looking forward to just like testing that stuff out. So that'll come soon. But just in the meantime, thanks again. I appreciate everyone. So many people are following right now. Thank you everyone for being a part of that podcast, and I appreciate all of the input from the community when we do these talks and giving us great points to talk about, because everyone on that call, we play at a certain level, we have certain expectations, and it's not always necessarily one-on-one with what the community feels. So having a very active community that shares how they feel helps us and helps Blizzard. I mean, it's just great all around having people that are so passionate about this game. So just thank you again one last time for being a part of the the experience, the podcast, and hanging out in the stream. So everyone that's following, thank you. We've got some work to do on our nursery. Moreholt's coming over, and he's going to help us move some furniture around. So I do have to end, unfortunately, this stream here, but I just wanted to make sure I thanked you all before I did that. So let's find somebody to raid. Probably someone from the stream. Last time we raided Rax. Let's see if Chronix is still going. Chronix or DM. I don't know that I've ever raided Chronix before, so see if he'll keep streaming. He put this all together, so
my will keep streaming. Yes, Lucky. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna raid over Chronix. He's gonna keep streaming. Let's raid over to Chronix. He put this whole thing together. Just great work from him, and the whole panel really did an amazing job. That was a very fun group to be a part of. Thank you, everyone. I will catch you all next time. The replay will be on the Max Roll YouTube channel. I've linked it a few times here. If you missed any of the discussion, I think it was a really good discussion today, so check that out. And thank you for everyone that's following. We'll go hang out with Chronix. Have a great rest of your weekend. Peace.